Mountbatten, Windsor, is currently living since being thrown out of the Windsor estate. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's an extraordinary revelation and development on this story involving the Epstein files and all the allegations that have been swirling around about Andrew over the many years, from Virginia Giuffre, now sadly deceased, and since then, and certainly what's been contained in the Epstein files as released in the last few weeks. But the police have arrived at Sandringham Estate this morning, where Andrew has made his new home. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is. He has been arrested by the police. Of course, the brother of the current king, the second son of our late Queen Elizabeth. This is an extraordinary development. Those of us who've been talking an awful lot about establishment cover-ups and lack of, should we say, interest by the police in what are very, very serious allegations against Andrew. Perhaps pleased that that pressure has finally been put on the police, and they have done the job of actually looking into these issues seriously. Must bear in mind, of course, that the Prince has not been charged with any crime at this point, and he has always denied any wrongdoing in relation to any of the allegations about him. We'll give you more on that. We'll talk to you about that throughout the show, but I'm just being told that the arrest has been on suspicion of misconduct in public office. This, of course, relates to those Epstein file allegations and the documents that, if they are true, would suggest that he had, it is alleged, passed on basically what was confidential government information when he was the UK trade envoy for this country for 10 years to Jeffrey Epstein for Jeffrey Epstein's financial.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning to you. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. It's the home, of course, of common sense, and, of course, the home of the alarm clock Brit. Thank you so much indeed to Mark Dolan yesterday. I was at home because my boy was 17 and I couldn't miss out on seeing his face as he had his first driving lesson and headed off down the road in his new car. So that was lovely. Thank you to Dolan. We're back live and exclusive across the UK. Loads to get through. As ever, my friends, we'll set the challenge. Who's going to get the first voice note into Christian this morning? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. Damien is here. Dodgy Damien is taking your calls as well, bless him. You can also text 87222. Chaos at the BBC. You'll have seen all the stories. Scott Mills, the BBC Radio 2 breakfast presenter, becomes another scandal hit presenter to be sacked as it emerges that he was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sexual offences against a teenage boy. At that moment, the police deemed that there wasn't enough to prosecute. Listen, we'll talk about it. Strange to me in that, why have you waited 10 years? It was apparently the very last action of Tim Davie as a Director General on Thursday. Is he doing it for legacy? Is it the new regime? Why did it take 10 years? And how many other rotten apples are inside the BBC? We'll let you know. The National Rape Gang inquiry does actually finally begin today. 9 months after it was announced, they reckon it'll be so organised, this, not Baroness Longfield is chairing it, it could last until 2029. Surely, like me, you think we should be doing this quicker and we should be concentrating on the very reasons that was set up. I love this. The French say non to Chabanamum. I don't even understand this. We give the bleeding French £500 million a year to sort of make sure they keep an eye on the situation with migrants. I've read a thing that says they only intercepted 33% of them last year, and yet they want more money. They say none to us. I say sod off. You're not having any more money. We don't need you. What, 500 million's a lot of money. And I don't know what's happened to Keir Starmer since I went on Thursday. He's issued a 48-hour ultimatum to striking doctors. Having wiped their backsides a year ago with 29%, they've come back. And he's saying, no, if you don't take the deal, you can do one. Has he suddenly and utterly... Has he grown a pair? And he's having a Cobra meeting today about the cost of fuel. It's really interesting, this, by the way. You know diesel's hit £2 a litre. The government are making 20 million quid out of us every single day in fuel tax. I'll tell you exactly how to sort it out, Keir Starmer. Take some pressure off people that drive their cars. Listen, usually... we cobble together somebody for the paper review who, frankly, with respect, is you know, an up-and-coming journalist or somebody like that. Terrible noise in Mayor this morning. Terrible noise. going to have to swap my mic in just a tick, because it's me. It's absolutely awful. But I'm going to introduce you, well, this is sorted for me, by a legend. Peter Bleksley, good morning. You talk, I'm going to sort this.
Thank you very much for introducing me as a terrible noise in your ear. It's an absolute pleasure to be back. Thank you. I used to do this slot regularly on a Tuesday.
Did you?
Yeah, and it's a great honour to be here and having a bit of fun and a lot of very serious news stories this morning, which there are. Would you allow me, please, to pick my own choice of story?
I can't do anything about it because I'm being undressed by Damien as we speak.
Well, in that case, I'm going to turn to page 2 of The Sun this morning. Now, people may remember that yesterday morning, The Sun did a brilliant expose on just how pathetic the police are when it comes to investigating burglaries. In a third of the country, they don't solve any burglaries at all. But it would appear that, and it's just a very, very small green shoot of recovery, I think, but that policing might actually be rewinding back to what it once was and what I think the public want it to be. And that is...
Do not put the camera on now.
And that is a police service that patrols the streets. And by patrolling the streets, that it might deter and prevent crime. And not only that, but when crime has been committed, wait for it, drum roll, can you believe it, the police, we're told, because of Shabana Mahmood's instructions, are actually going to investigate crime. Now, wouldn't that be a turn-up for the books?
It would, and I'm back.
And it's great to have you.
You managed to keep a very straight face while Damien was undressing me there. Well done.
I know how to avert my gaze, Mr. Kyle. Don't worry about that.
That's the line.
So it could be great news, but I issue a very stern word of caution.
Yep.
Police bosses, for the last generation or more, have taken policing away from that.
Yeah, they
from
have.
Policing the streets, from preventing crime, from detecting crime and investigating crime. And they've turned it quite willingly, in fact deliberately, into the pseudo social services organisation that it has become in so many regards. Now, senior bosses will say, Bleksley's a dinosaur, policing's moved on because we investigate so much crime that happens behind closed doors.
I get that,
That's
but
what
it's
they'll say.
But do you know what it is? With so much, for me, it's about balance. And this thought police and online crime has caused numerous problems, certainly to youngsters, and I get that. But it's like diversity. Let's have people of all ethnicities and all religions in jobs. It's gone to the point that, people have said this isn't outrageous, that it's so imbalanced that if you're white and middle class, you haven't got a freaking chance. That's the truth about this. So we're not against online, we're not advocating hatred as a good thing. But when Lucy Connolly gets 31 months and you can walk down the street in a hate march burning an Israeli flag, I can't have it. They need, somehow, as you quite rightly said, to get their heads back in gear. And it comes from the top, doesn't it? But isn't it interesting to you that there seems to be a tide turning? Shabana Mahmood, by the way, I would never probably agree with anything to do with the Labour Party. She's like a lone voice. I have absolutely no idea, no doubt, by the way, that she will be cast aside when Starmer goes like a piece of rubbish. Because she talks sense. Not that she's done anything too pragmatic, because she's like everybody else, stalled, I suspect, by the Labour Party, but she certainly seems to have a grasp, doesn't she, of what needs to be done. That would be a fair comment, wouldn't it?
She speaks like she has a grasp, yes. But of course, when it comes to policing, whether it's the politicians or the police chiefs, talk is cheap and policing is expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved your use of the word balance, by the way, in regards to policing.
It's true.
Because as a policing dinosaur, I'm not saying don't investigate domestic violence. Of course I'm not. Yes, get behind those closed doors for the abuse of children and the online crime. Of course, but there needs to be a balance struck, in so much as that frontline policing patrolling the streets, investigating burglaries, phone thefts, car crime, has been ignored. It's been cast out into the wilderness.
I was watching something over the weekend, this one of those unwashed green types, trying to justify how people walk into supermarkets now and just empty the shelves and nobody does anything. And what was he saying? The billionaires, they take all the money from poor people and make food expensive. I was brought up where you couldn't go and nick something like that. They get you by the collar and drag you back to your mum. And much as I don't want people writing vile things that advocate all sorts of terrible things, like I said, I don't want people who've worked all their life having their shops ransacked. I don't want people being burgled. I don't want people's cars and phones being nicked. The reason that we haven't got coppers, apart from the ideology from the top, is there's none on the street anymore. But here's my irony. Do you remember after the Southport, awful things that happened in Southport?
Yes. 6,000
police took to the streets. So how the hell did they come up with them like that? Oh, I know why, because it was apparently far right.
Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah, absolutely.
5,000 officers mustered for that single
here's
weekend.
The thing from Bill in Romsey. Morning, Pete. Morning, JK. How is it that MPs and people on benefits get a 5 to 6% pay rise this week and I get bugger all?
Very true. I can't remember when all right, I'm self-employed. I'm self-employed.
You can't remember.
But I cannot remember when anybody that employs me on a freelance basis said, actually, we're nudging up what we pay you, Peter. No, we don't.
Don't give me... Can I just say, ladies and gentlemen, to have him back, this man, OK, who was once a really good copper, Metropolitan, is now in the middle of a nationwide tour, The Makings of a Murderer, The Undercover Detective, starring Peter Bleksley, 150 dates. He's 51 in. He's been traversing the nation. I arrived this morning to find him sat in the corner of our office demanding all sorts of... Get me tea, Damien. Where's my makeup artist? What's happened with you, Bleksley?
Actually, I did say, could I please have a cup of coffee if you've got the time, you see? Because manners maketh man, as my mum drummed into me. Bless her, she's still with us.
Is she my
97.
97?
Yeah, and still
You still scared of her?
I still adore her with every ounce of my body.
97?
Yeah.
Does that mean you're going to go on that long? Because it's
probably not. I don't have the lifestyle of an Olympian, shall we say.
Olympian. Right, so much to talk about. Completely agree with you about the police. Let's start with the #1 news story that seems to be everywhere. Ready to breakfast DJ axed for personal conduct. This is Scott Mills. Complaint over historic relationship. Last show was on the day of the Hugh TV drama. Not interested. Booted out at the weekend. The thing that everybody is saying this morning, and I'm not going to get personal, I've met Scott Mills, I know Scott Mills, but absolute chaos. How many more rotten apples are there at the BBC? And you know, you can look at this both ways, Pete. You can go that there is an undercurrent at that organisation of people who are very, very quick to pass judgment on anybody and everything. They've got their ideology politically. They think they're the best. No, no, no. He was investigated by police in 2016, say the reports, over serious sex offences against a teenage boy. Now, I'm just going to say this without upsetting anybody. 0344 499 1000. If he was, at that moment, investigated, and the police did not, Pete, think there were enough details to go forward with the prosecution, why 10 years later the BBC, for whom he's worked for 20 years, A, and one, why didn't they know about this before, and B, and two, is it not ironic that Tim David, the Director General, on his very last day in office decided to sack Scott Mills? That's not me sticking up for Scott Mills in any way. It's just saying, is this playing to some sort of narrative, last day in the job, new regime?
The problem here is, because the BBC is licensed, payer funded, we deserve to know why he's been sacked.
Absolutely.
It would put to bed all this kind of speculation, all the guesswork, people dragging up an investigation in 2016 which clearly didn't gather
and it might not be that. We don't know. It could be something else.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And the public pay for this organisation, so the public have a right to know why one of its most prominent members of staff has been fired. It could be that the BBC bosses have acted absolutely brilliantly, perhaps, and got ahead of the curveball and are doing something to protect the reputation.
But it doesn't make sense. 2016,
but we don't know.
But 2016 is 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And he's worked for them for 20 years, so it immediately makes one. I mean, you think about John Turode, you think about Greg Wallace, you think about, I mean, the list becomes endless. Kay Adams has just been fired from BBC Scotland for apparently saying a couple of things that might have upset people. And I know Kay Adams. I'm not in any way, because if this is as serious as we've been led to believe it is, then absolutely he should be long gone. But you just wonder how much more. And I have to say, from a personal point of view, apologies for this, They're a real sanctimonious bunch, the BBC. And maybe there's a degree of anger in me saying that, but it's true. The BBC are very judgmental. They're judgmental about other people's programmes, about other people's stories. And I find it quite interesting, is the only word I'm going to use, that when the light is shone in reverse, actually it turns out you lot are as bad, if not worse, than all the people you've spent years decrying.
It's a huge organisation. It's absolutely vast, the BBC.
Yeah.
And I think therein probably lies some of the issues with it.
You don't think it's anything to do with the people that might think I'm on the BBC, I'm bigger than the rules, I can get away with this? Because I don't understand how anybody believes they can get away with this.
I've been to New Broadcasting House on numerous occasions.
I've never been, strangely.
To contribute to various shows over the years.
Have you?
And, and there are some people who quite clearly believe their own publicity. But likewise, I've met some people that work for that organisation whose integrity I would trust till the cows come home. I think it's like any vast organisation. There's very, very good and there's some very, very bad. I don't see why perhaps licence fee payers should pay for things like the World Service.
No.
I think those kind of things should fundamentally stand on their own 2 feet commercially. If they can get funding to pay for it, then fine. Why should I, as a licence fee payer, be paying for a radio station that is enjoyed by people in far-flung places of the world that I'm never going to go to? I don't kind of see that. It does churn out some incredible content, but I think there is an argument that it's too big. Look, if I turn on my television, if I'm at home, and I scroll through and it says BBC 3, for example, or BBC 4, and it doesn't start till whatever time at night it does. Well, in that case, if you're not broadcasting all day, turn it off. Get rid of those channels. They're superfluous. I think it panders too much. It tries to be everything to everyone, and clearly no broadcaster can be that. And I think the sooner the BBC actually realises that upsetting people is quite a good thing because it sparks debate, and then they should do that.
I think the thing about the BBC is, a bit like the royal family, they're at a really interesting moment in their futures, if you like, or where they're at now. There needs to be greater transparency. I go back to the fact the royal family, to survive, are going to have to be more transparent. The BBC has got away with this for years, but it's the same as I feel like so much, Pete, at the moment, which is that, and I know it's the same phrase every day, the silent majority have always paid their bills, always said, oh, I'll just do whatever I'm told, have never broken the law, have never really complained. Suddenly, and I know I bring it back, but it's true, are suddenly going, hold on a minute, people are coming to this country and getting more than me, people are committing crime and getting away with it, and the BBC that has whatever you think, and because we might be to the right, I don't care if you're to the left, but the BBC is so, like, that's our thing, you're a complete piece of rubbish, I'm not listening to you. And when the light is shone, as I said earlier, it turns out that they're no better than the rest of us, it seems. And I think people are going, yeah, 175 quid for what? I think they have a real issue right now, the BBC. Like the royal family, it's just not going to be the same anymore, and you're going to have to justify your very existence. Load on Scott Mills, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Also, I didn't know this, but the National Inquiry into Rape Gangs finally underway today, chaired by Baroness Longfield. It'll take months before it announces which areas will be investigated and could last till 2029. This needs to be streamlined. I told you before, a long time ago, I interviewed a senior detective in Rochdale, and I said to him, why has it taken you 8 years? This was years ago. And he said to me, we didn't want to upset certain parts of the population. If this is a whitewash, if this doesn't look at the areas in the north where British Pakistani men, not all of them, but raped young English vulnerable 8-year-old girls, this will be a complete and utter sham. Why in the name of God, quick question, do they not know already where they should be targeting? Or is it will take months before it announces which areas? Is that just blarney? Is that trying to get away with actually dealing with the facts?
Speak to those in the know, like the incredible Maggie Oliver, and she will tell you this rape gang inquiry is not going back far enough. It seems like to have a very convenient time frame that is probably politically motivated, and it's not going to have the depth and breadth that it should have.
I'd love your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Already we've talked about the crisis at the BBC as BBC Radio 2 breakfast presenter Scott Mills is fired over a serious sex offences. He was investigated by the police in 2016. Serious sex offences against a teenage boy. Charges not brought. The BBC 10 years down the line have gone, oh, I think we better get rid of you. Love your thoughts on that. The National Rape Gang inquiry starting today. It could take months before we even know where they're looking. Jesus, if this, I swear to God, if this is a whitewash, it's a disgrace. Also, the Thought Police have been ordered by Shabana Mahmood to spend less time looking at tweets and more time actually dealing with crime. So if your house has been burgled or your car's been nicked or your mobile phone's been grabbed, you might actually get a policeman or woman, I have to say that, to come and sort it out rather than getting upset because Christian's written, I don't like Jeremy Kyle on a tweet. Back in 3. Breaking news and Talk Breakfast. 2 men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:23. JK back in the seat. It's breakfast for Tuesday morning. What is it, the 31st of March, the last day of the month? Oh, God, it's April Fool's Day tomorrow. I'm nervous. 0344 499 1000. Peter Blexley. Morning, Peter. Morning, Jez. I love it when Peter's on your show. I saw his show in Folkestone, The Makings of a Murderer, the undercover detective. He was fantastic, says Mary in Canterbury, who patently doesn't get out very often.
Thank
Good morning,
Mary.
Mary. I knew a Mary once, Hairy Mary from the dairy in Castle Carey, but that's another story. Sean Marshall is in Kidderminster. Have you been to Kidderminster yet with the show?
No, but we're going there.
It'd be lovely down there, mate. Morning,
Yeah.
Jez and Pete. Regarding the non-investigation of burglary, I remember when working in a jail, this would be good for you.
Yep.
The police would come in, take out prolific burglars and drive them around areas of crime too, which they admit to doing. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, sometimes that actually was a very good thing, because if you've got a career burglar, they're serving time in prison.
Yeah.
They would say sometimes, right, they'd write to the police and say, please come and see me whilst I'm serving, because I want to wipe the slate clean. The last thing they wanted to do is do a bit of time for burglary, come out of prison and find that they get nicked at the gates. Because we used to do that, you see.
Oh, did you? That's nice.
Yeah, you think it's
build yourself up to leave and get nicked again by Peter Blexley.
Exactly. Well, they're frigging wrongdoers.
But hold on a second. How do you think that affected their anxiety levels, you horrible, nasty man?
Yeah, funnily enough, we weren't overly concerned about their mental health.
Well, that's half the problem, maybe, love.
Get in the back of the van, mind your head. Right.
Oh, you didn't.
So, and then they would go around and say, yeah, I did that one, I did that one, I did that one. But you've got to be very, very careful with that, because unscrupulous detectives who want just to solve crimes and write them off might get somebody to admit to a crime that they hadn't actually done.
You're not telling me the police ever pressurised people into admitting crimes they didn't do?
You need to be very, very careful of that. It's a good thing to do, but it has to be done by people with unshakable integrity.
0344 499 1000. Peter Blexley with me. We're talking about Scott Mills being sacked from the BBC. Absolute chaos at the crisis hit BBC as another one of their main presenters, I was going to say has fallen on his sword. He was fired on Thursday. Morning, Jay.
Morning, Jez. A great show as always. Just want to say the BBC, again, in the headlines for the wrong reasons. I hope Trump sues them into next week. Trump's favourite word, obliteration. Do it. They're taking people's money, taxpayers' money, for licences and upping it. You know, it's an absolute disgrace. Most people I know don't even watch the BBC. Every other week or month there's an accusation of an alleged sexual offence or something going on with the BBC. Dopped-in videos of the greatest ally to the United Kingdom, well, ex-greatest ally at the moment. Hopefully we turn that round. But they just need to lower their heads in the sand. You know, they won't even call a terrorist group, terrorists. Everyone's a freedom fighter or this or that. Absolute idiots.
Couldn't agree more. 627 0344 499 1000. So much here, Pete. Labour will ensure the rape gang inquiries are dragged out, whitewashed, and the verdict will be lessons learned. In my opinion, says Jules in London, a waste of time and money. This is responding to the news story this morning. The National Rape Gang inquiry finally getting underway, chaired by Baroness Longfield. They say it'll take months until they work out the areas they're looking into. I swear to God, in my gut, I know, Peter Blexley, that means they're going to avoid the areas that need doing. Jez, call me cynical, but Mahmood says a lot, but very little is ever done, which is interesting. This is for you, Michael. 2 successes in 100 is no success. Knife crime, disorder, shoplifting, burglary and robbery are not the biggest threats to law and order. It's the over-promoted, DEI fanatical, politically biased police chiefs and progressive judges. Only the clearing of these sewers at the top can bring order and security back, says your son, which is right. But that sounds like you. It's true, isn't it?
Thank you very much for
Michael.
echoing, albeit in different phraseology, so much of what I've been saying for years. There is a huge problem with senior police officers. Not only the wokery, the liberalism, the perceived progressiveness, and the fact that they're completely out of touch with what happens on the front line. If you look over recent years, there's been an awful lot of senior police officers dismissed or disciplined for acts of dishonesty, lying to people, lying to victims of crime, behaving in completely unacceptable ways. So not only are they the fluffy and the woke and the liberal and the progressive and the nonsense-headed people that they are, many of them, but some of them behave absolutely abominably. And, of course, they are all very swift to throw the frontline cops under the bus when they get half a chance.
But it's what I said earlier. Love your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. I think that if you lead the police, you lead the royal family, you lead in education, you lead in the NHS, I think you'll be in question quite rightly like never before. Loads to talk about this morning. Crisis at the BBC, National Rape Gang inquiry. Adrian, morning.
Morning, Jeremy. Morning, Peter. It's Adrian again from East Sussex. Yeah, the rape gang inquiry was always going to be a whitewash job. The councils, the police forces, everybody did it to protect their chosen ethnic minority. And that continues on right the way across the country. You can racially abuse white people or Jews in this country now. Don't get your collar felt. Wave a UK flag or have a silent prayer outside of a mosque or an abortion centre, and you're gonna get nicked, aren't you? It's absolutely dreadful. But you can see that both the political and the cultural elite want to destroy the country. Really sad.
He says the political and cultural elite. Do you agree with me or not? Do you not think it's on the turn? Do you not think the sensible man and woman in this country has had enough of this BS?
Where he says they want to destroy the country, I think they want to shape it and mould it into something that most people actually do not want. There is a real problem about this country and the direction of travel. There fundamentally is. And I think so much of it is led by the politicians and the public services. And we can rewind the clock to 1997 when Blair started all of this kind of progressive movement with his political correctness. Now, some of that got rid of words out of our language which we won't use again, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But of course, then the roots of it have gone so deep, like Japanese knotweed, that you can't get it out. And it's all part of this whole DEI kind of stuff. This
but
whole,
you
can't offend me.
I know,
it
but
dates
you know when
back
you
to
have
then.
conversations with people, and this is in no way... Let's just make this point. The Scott Mills axing is, it emerges he was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sex offences against a teenage boy. We're just making that point. There were no charges. The BBC have decided to act. What I find impossible, whether I'm talking to my student daughter or I'm talking to, I don't know, I mean, the Green Lot in Trafalgar Square. To me, there's no sense. I mean, I'm actually being supportive in the past when people say I'm quite worried about our rivers, I'm quite worried about our countryside. This sort don't give a toss about it. They literally stand there and say, you know, you're this, you're that, we're going to legalise this, we're going to open the borders, we're going to give, with absolutely no understanding of what it's doing to the British people. And the reason that I do this every single day is I actually think people are wising up, and I genuinely believe it. And this sounds, God, I sound like Citizen Smith. I do believe in the power of the people. We've seen prime ministers topple because people have realised they're not prepared to take this BS anymore. I think that I've said it twice already this morning. I think the royal family is at a seminal moment. It's going to have to be far more transparent because people are saying Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been exiled to Sandringham, where he lives with a chef and a valet. Try telling that to Alarm Clock Britain, who can't pay their bills. It doesn't wash anymore. And I hope this DEI... I hope that is the same. Interesting emails, loads of it. Thank you, Scott, who, the last time I listened to Radio 2... Terry Wogan ruled the airwaves. Carl in Derbyshire, Terry Wogan, what a legend. Morning, JK and PB. I said to myself last week, that Scott Mills needs to be sacked. Do you know why? I was listening on Tuesday and he cut Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush, missing out on the beautiful electrical guitar bit at the end. Total bloody sacrilege. Good riddance to bad rubbish. It's a bit harsh. Old Dave Doubledecks through the glass, he'd do a better job. This is nice, from Alex in Cardiff. The BBC, Jez, is a deeply flawed organisation and to me sinister. I feel for you what you went through with your show after your show, but you're fighting for the country and have the guts to say how you see things. With so many wrong-uns at the BBC, we at Talk have better values than any of them. Great show. Glad to see you back with the brilliant Peter Blexley, fighting to get the police back to what it was tirelessly. Pete hasn't been in a retirement home for old coppers. He's been traversing the globe. And what I love about your tour, apart from not being given a ticket, is your wife's driving you, so you can't even... There's no fun to be had. The wife's with you.
Excuse me, for the record, I did say to you that should you want to come to a show of your choosing, there will be 2 complimentary tickets for you and your wife waiting for you at the box office.
Did you really say complimentary?
Yes,
well, that tells you how little I want to see your show, that they're free and I didn't want to go. No, well, it's literally kids. I don't know what to do with all the kids. I'd love to come and see that.
Get a babysitter. You're very much missing out.
Yeah, she won't let me have a nanny.
From Canterbury said.
She won't let me have a nanny, but that's another story. 0344 499 1000. So we've talked about the crisis at the BBC. We've talked about the National Rape Gang inquiry. We've talked about how the thought police are being told to just calm it a bit. Shabana Mahmood.
Yeah.
There's this deal with the French, right? The deal with the French is I imagine you're French. Can you be French for a minute?
Oui.
Good morning, Peter Blexley.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Would you like £500 million? Don't know why I'm doing this. Would you like 500 million quid? All you got to do is make sure a lot of migrants don't leave France.
I wish. I mean,
but you haven't done the French bit now. Come on.
I left school at 16. Okay,
you didn't. You were thrown out at 12. Anyway, we give them £500 million a year to, is it police the beaches or what? Intercept people who are coming?
But there's somebody who's kind of wriggled off the hook without getting much mention, and that was Martin Hewitt, who left his very senior job at the Metropolitan Police, went to head up the border force on a salary of £200,000 a year, quit after 18 months.
It's not bitter at all.
So he trousered 300 grand, and what did he do?
Absolutely nothing. It's like Jürgen from Great British Energy. Who the hell is Jürgen?
You see? So nothing's happening, right? We've had a bit of respite because it's been blowy for the last few days.
Has it?
But it was only last week when just under 1,000 of them
Is he talking about
came
the weather or the
in
crisis
6
at the
days.
BBC? No.
In
Yes.
6 days.
No.
1,000 of them, I think it was on 16 boats or something. It's utterly ludicrous. And these people, this dirt that we're importing into this country, knowingly and willingly, the politicians are doing it. And what about Mukahil, convicted last week of raping a 12-year-old? Came here 4 months earlier.
The 3-year, £500 million deal expires tonight. She, Shabana Mahmood, has said, you know, I'm going to give you targets, and they've gone, no. Well, I'll tell you what, no. Stuff you ain't getting no money. What? How am I spending $1.5 billion over 3 years for somebody not to do the job? Why are we not with politicians who go, that's not value for money. I can take that $1.5 billion and warm a few pensioners home so you can shove it up your French backside. Sorry, just being honest.
I know a few. I know a few very handy young men who can shift some furniture. And for a fraction of that cost, we could go to France and ensure that not one dinghy and not one illegal migrant made their way across to the UK.
My mate Rob's got one for you this morning. Peter will hopefully be honest enough, Jez, to admit in his era the Met was one of the most corrupt police forces in its history. Does he think it's better or worse now?
Policing will never be perfect because it's full of people. In fact, the corruption within policing today has just kind of changed. The bad behaviour has changed. We didn't have David Carricks, we didn't have Wayne Couzens, we didn't have...
Or did you?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We didn't murder, kidnap, rape and murder young women off the streets.
Well, what changed it then?
That didn't happen. There was, of course, noble cause corruption. There was brown envelope corruption. There was Masonic frigging back scratching, all that kind of stuff that went on. Of course there was. But now the wrongdoing is of a very different
You don't think it's
nature.
because it's more highlighted? I'm going to tell a story now that is genuinely true, and I didn't think I'd ever say it on the radio, but we were brought up in Reading, and you know the things that you read about now, and sometimes I think to myself, is it social media? This is all it can be checked out. There used to be a bunch of us, used to go fishing, and one of them, I'm not going to name him because that's not fair to his family, disappeared one day, and he was found, murdered, cut up and murdered. I mean, I'm completely honest, by a paedophile. He was 8 years of age, and it affected everybody, right? But it wasn't made into this thing. I don't know whether it's media is different, social media is different, right? Maybe there were bad eggs in the police that we just didn't hear about. I'm not saying Wayne Cousin-esque, but I think we've reached a point, I said it all show, where everybody has to be a bit more liable for what the public think. That's the good side of the media.
One of the many, many reasons why I've missed sitting in this chair in front of you today is because of two words that you've used that are so important
Peter
to getting this country back to where it needs to
I
be.
know what you're gonna say.
The first word you used was balance, and the second word you used was transparency, right? Royalty, yes, transparency. BBC, transparency. Policing, transparency. Politicians, transparency. We're desperate for it because what does Alarm Clock Britain do? Goes to work, sets its alarm clock, graphs, pays taxes, is concerned about the rise of fuel and food in the supermarket, paying the bills, all of that, and yet we look at these people in their exalted positions and we don't see transparency. We don't see it. It's all hidden.
Joe's in Norfolk. Great show, Joe. Scott Mills sacking. I'm fed up hearing about men being investigated for sexual behaviours, especially those from the BBC. Makes you think how many less sexual crimes would have been... oh dear. What? It makes you think how many less sexual crimes we would have if the threat of having your bits cut off was carried through. That's interesting. Karen in Newcastle. Way, yay, man. That was terrible. Chesapeake, we love Peter. Why can't Peter be head of the Met Police? More common sense than the Muppets that are in power right now. Listen, if I was ever Prime Minister, which isn't going to happen, I would call Blexley immediately and say, Peter, you should fight them out in the communities. Actually, I'll put Rob with you. Woodchurch, Jez, I'm going to see the legendary PB on his tour at Tunbridge Wells. If you go too, Jez, on the 15th with your wife, me and Mrs B will treat you to supper, says Mr B in Woodchurch.
Tunbridge Wells, beautiful part of Kent, the Garden of England.
Tim and I went, no, we're not doing that. Alex, good morning. The problem with this Trump suing the BBC is it's still the taxpayers that will pay for the settlement. I absolutely agree with that. BBC, rape gang inquiry, the French saying no, no. What's happened to me there? The police, stop the thought police rubbish and find a burglar. Wayne, good morning.
Morning, Jezza. Morning, Mr. Blackslate. It's Wayne from Erdington in Birmingham. The BBC has and still is a corrupt entity. It should be a free service or a pay-per-view service. They'd have no viewers. Keep up the good work, guys. Have a good show.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, welcome back. It's 18 minutes to 7. It's JK on Breakfast, the home of common sense talk, the home of Alarm Clock Britain. What are you waking up to this morning? Absolute chaos at the British Broadcasting Corporation. Scott Mills, Radio 2 breakfast show and a stalwart of BBC Radio there. He's been there for 20 years. He's worked on other programmes as well. He's been sacked after he was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sex offences against a teenage boy. Nothing happened. The police said not enough to go on. Mills sacked last Thursday in the last act by the then Director General Tim Davie. Timing's interesting, but it does cast a light on the British Broadcasting Corporation yet again. £175 each, and it seems they're very good at passing judgment, but when you shine the light on them, they're a bunch of dodgy people, aren't they? 0344 499 1000. The National Rape Gang inquiry finally starts today. Baroness Longfield. It could last until 2029. Apparently it's going to take months to even decide which areas they're going to look at. Just phone us at Talk. We'll tell you where to look. Rochdale, Bury, that's where you want to look specifically. Oh, you don't want to look there. Wonder why that is. The French say no. Shabana Moose, excuse me, if I'm going to give you another 1.5 billion quid, do you think you could have some tuckers? No. Do you think you are? No. I was going to say that all morning. No.
They'll take the money, but will they do their job?
Don't give them the bleeding money.
I agree.
Oh, hello. Morning, Brian. How are you, son?
Morning, Jeremy. Brian from Dorset. Just wanted to say this government are playing us for fools. The rape gang inquiry, with no set terms yet, it doesn't know what it's going to investigate. But what we do know is that the results are not going to be published until 2029, which just happens to be after the next election has to be held. They're just playing us for idiots.
Rob's come back at you, Mr. Armstrong. Many people were verbally fitted up back then when arresting officers would both say that the person had made a full confession in the car on the way to the station, and both would swear under oath this was the truth, and many innocent people ended up in jail.
Many people were fitted up and beaten up, and I've been very public about that over the years. I've said it in newspapers, I've said it in documentaries, and by crikey, have I had some hatred come my way as a result of it. Yes, they certainly did. Policing will never be perfect. I do think, on that very note, that fortunately one of the best thing that came out of the Brixton riots was the Scarman report, which led to the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984. And with the stroke of a pen and a piece of legislation, so much of that kind of stuff then became nigh on impossible.
Cliff in Berkshire says, Pete, Jez, the difference now with the quality of the police force is down to the way would-be recruits are vetted. A senior frontline officer used to go to the home of the potential recruit with their family. Interesting. Anna in Surrey. I think this is interesting. I live in a reasonably decent area. I'm 60 years of age. I'm a law-abiding woman. I, as with most of my friends and family, I'm sorry to say, no longer trust the police and no longer feel safe. I don't know how... I trust the army. How would Peter correct this?
First thing, Anna, treasure and look after that beautiful place where you live, because I've been to some parts of the UK that are in free fall, absolute decline and decay, which is very, very sad, as well as the beautiful bits. Of course, she doesn't trust the police anymore. And this is, I go back to my point, that they don't investigate the burglaries, the car crime, the phone thefts, the shoplifting.
The stuff that we think they should and need them to.
That was how, right, we didn't have the phone theft, but through investigating burglary, car crime and shoplifting, it's how we engaged with victims, neighbourhoods, shopkeepers, all those kind of people.
Intel.
It's how we got
Ear
to
to
know
the ground,
them.
of course.
It's how we got to know them. And even if it was a burglary that we couldn't solve, the people, the victims, appreciated the fact that we'd gone there. We'd looked for fingerprints with the scenes of crime officer. We'd gone out in the garden to see if there were any shoe marks, or if the burglar had dropped a screwdriver or a glove or a balaclava or a hat, because they do that sometimes. We'd knocked on the next door neighbours to say, did you see anything suspicious? We went over the road to see those neighbours. Did you see anything suspicious? And so even if the crime wasn't solved, we met a number of people in that community. They got to know us. They appreciated we were doing our job, and as a result, they liked us.
Completely agree. 0344 499 1000. What is it? It's 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. Pete, take a breath. We're going to say a very good morning. Well, Kinsey Schofield unavailable, Hugo Vickers unavailable, Andrew Loney unavailable, Angela Levin unavailable. So unfortunately now we're going to talk Royals, and we're going to have to make do with Rupert Bell, who's today surfaced as Talk's Royal correspondent. Belly, good morning.
Good morning, you. I knew you'd say something like that. Well, you know, basically, I come little and often on this programme, but when I do, I leave my mark. I'm not sure what mark it is, but I do leave a mark.
Well, I'm not. I'm slightly worried about your mark. No, we joke. We love having you on, Belly. I didn't see you at Cheltenham. Did you?
Well, I was.
Did you have a successful one?
Work-wise, it was fine, but from a... tipping winners, business as usual, useless. So there we go. No, great fun. Interesting news from Cheltenham. They've had to cancel 3 meetings as a result of drainage problems. But I don't think I'm on here to talk about Cheltenham's drainage problems.
You're on to talk about how, and we were just talking to Peter Blex, who's in today, that to me, there are many parts of this country now, the royal family being one of them, where far greater transparency is going to be demanded by the silent majority for it to survive and continue. News that, I mean, we know what's gone on with the Yorks. We know that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is exiled in Sandringham. Fergie hasn't been seen, but there has been a light shone on the 2 daughters. I was honest enough to say initially I didn't realise they were 18 and 20 when they went to Epstein's Island, and the pressure has started to build. There's been stories over the last couple of weeks. Officially today, Eugenie and Beatrice to miss Easter church service after Andrew's scandal. Now, the papers are at pains to point out that this is in agreement with the King, but this is the beginning of them, quite rightly, being ostracised, isn't it?
I think what it is, they don't want it to become part of the main story, is Beatrice and Eugenie. And it was the same when Andrew, before he was sent into sort of exile, that whenever he turned up, he dominated the headlines. And I think it's still very fresh in people's minds about what's happened to Andrew and obviously the release of those files. I think from a PR perspective, the royal family don't need the hassle. Now, it's still got plenty of legs to run in terms of this story. What is their involvement? How can they... They're obviously looking at ways of probably trying to distance themselves. But those emails didn't give it a very good look with regard to the way, particularly their mother, seemed to be pushing them forward to be involved. Now, with questions about their lifestyle has been asked. How can they afford some of the things they did? But now, I think in many ways, it's probably their marriages, you know, it can't be easy dealing with these issues. So I think it's better that for all and sundry, that they're kept away from what is a sort of semi-public event, but obviously it's more of seen like Christmas Day is private as well.
It's interesting because last couple of weeks there started to be stories I should say, in the press about both of their marriages. I know a lot of people have said to me, oh, why are they in the target? I'll tell you why in the target, because there are there are allegations, we don't know if they're true or not, and you just touched upon it, that they have also used contacts through all sorts of people to feather their own nests. And they are sadly sort of implicated by their parents' involvement. And at 20, you'd know about Jeffrey Epstein. And I suspect if you take a jet with your mother to see him on a private island a few days after he's been released from prison, you must assume that's going to come up and bite you on the backside. Charles always made a thing about how he would protect them. That could become more and more impossible for him, couldn't it?
It could, if there are more revelations about their behaviour. But you still go back to, what was their mother thinking in the first place?
But I said this, Belly. I said this, and I was outraged on a show. I said they're 6 and 8. They were 18 and 20. Are you telling me that an 18 and 20-year-old don't know their mind enough? If my mother went, oh, we're going to go to an island of Jeffrey Epstein, he's been in prison for paedophilia, you wouldn't go, would you?
I wouldn't go, but the whole thing is, unfortunately, they've always been very loyal to their mother, who has over the years shown a bounce-back ability second to none. But even now, that's never going to happen again in her case. But for the children, it is unedifying. They've got to resolve it some way or another. And hopefully, in their own mind, they can rebuild, but quietly rebuild. And obviously, if there are any more lurid headlines, then it could be very difficult for both Beatrice and Eugenie if they are sort of dragged further into it.
I think they'll leave the country. Eugenie already living with Jack Brookshank in Portugal. I think Beatrice and the Italian stallion, as he's called, Edo, whatever, he's got business interests. They might well go to America. It's quite interesting. I don't know if you've seen the article in The Sun today by the excellent Clemmy Moody. It says, and she's talking about how, we're always questioning politicians, where they get their money from. We're always asking the people at the BBC to justify their salaries. She says the royals must end the mystery of their hidden millions. Who is exactly paying for all the art and the Porsches? Because civil list taxpayer, what I've said all along, Pete, the British public are wising up. And I think the royals are at a crossroads, Roop. I really do.
Everything's got to be out in the open. Now, funding, there's a sort of difficult area with the funding. Now, for the Prince of Wales, he gets his funding from being from the Duchy of Cornwall. For the King, obviously, the civil list and funds that are raised.
Explain to people, just briefly, what the civil list is, because I know all about it, but just in layman's terms.
In layman's terms, it's a government's grant, basically, which they fund their official duties.
But they sold their land years ago. They gave their land back to the government in return for an amount of money that would allow them to sustain themselves whilst attracting huge interest and finance to the United Kingdom.
Absolutely. And this has got to be seen. And this is why there's always the debate about what goes on within the Duchy of Cornwall, what goes on in some of the other involvement, business sort of interests and land that they own. So it is a grey area for the royal family, and the King is mindful of it. That's why they talk about a slimmed-down monarchy, so that it's not seen as a drain on public resources. As we know, every penny it has to be accounted for. Whether we agree how it's spent or not, that's the debate for the politicians. But for the royal family, they have got to make sure they are as squeaky clean as possible. And all these scandals that they've been having with Andrew and everything else, it's not a good look for them, and that has hit them from a PR perspective. It's tough on the King. He's trying to make an impact, but every time he tries to do something, then something else happens to sort of put him on the back foot and the family on the back foot.
Couldn't agree more, Belly. I'm only joking. I love the bones of you, mate. We really appreciate you being on. A bit of an early start for you. Go and get Mrs. B to make you some eggs. Protein! Protein!
Well, Mrs. Bell actually is fairly protein obsessed, so maybe I do need an egg or two to keep me strong and keep me dealing with you, Jeremy, as and when required.
Good man, Belly. Thank you so much indeed. Almost 5 to 7. We're live across the UK. Talk Breakfast is on. Peter Blexley. He's full of beans this morning. I'm going to take you through a rundown of the news of the day. We're very short answers. We've got 2 minutes. Absolute chaos at the crisis hit BBC. Something's got to change with the BBC, hasn't it?
Turn over all those stones and shine a light on them. Come on, there's others there.
And make it if you want to watch the BBC, buy it. I don't think it works anymore. You can't just say you've got to pay this money whether you watch something or not. National Rape Gang Inquiry. You cynical like me? It'll be a whitewash.
Oh, completely. Won't go back far enough. They'll cherry pick what they want to look at and what they want to discuss, and it will, of course, fail victims. That's the scandal.
Absolutely. Today, the Channel Migrant deal with France, 500 million a year, finishes tonight. Do you think Mahmoud will stay strong in the face of the French or not?
250 million a year, me and my mates will ensure that no boats come to the UK.
Sorry, can we just have that again? Peter Blexley making a pitch to run the borders. What are you saying? You and your mates? For what?
For 250 mil,
yeah.
Right, I can guarantee that not one dinghy will reach the shores of the UK. Our tactics might not please everybody.
No.
And you know, Starmer might want to look at international law and lock us all up.
Yeah.
But until that point, none of them will get
you won't. You 200. If you made 250 million and got the contract, would you give up the makings of the murder of the tour?
No, I'm committed to my tour until the 27th of November. Coming to a theatre near you. Please go to entertainers.co.uk and buy your tickets now. Thank you for that opportunity.
Rob Armstrong says you're a good man. He loves the bones of you. Finally, we've got 40 seconds. Starmer today issues a 48-hour ultimatum to striking doctors. I'll take the deal. Or has he grown a pair finally, Keir Starmer?
He wouldn't know how to. I'm sure the doctors will ignore him because they're greedy, money-grabbing so-and-sos who ought to remind themselves of what their Hippocratic oath was.
Brilliant. Is that it? Anything else you'd like to add before you go?
I'd just like to say it's been a great honour, and once again, balance, transparency. They're the buzzwords that have come from you this morning that I'm taking with me all day.
He is a good man. We wish him the best of luck. He's the hardest working man I know, and do go to see it. The Makings of a Murderer, The Undercover Detective is an absolute star evening out. Enjoy that. News at 7. Ian Duncan Smith, former Conservative Party leader, 0344 499 1000 if you want to make a call or leave a voice note, 87222. What do you want to ask Sir Ian Duncan Smith? That is next on Talk after the news.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to.
I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite the camp. Do you feel safe for her? No, so that will have to stop. Right. We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays and age, what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Grover says no! Grover says no! Grover says no!
We would urge her to reconsider. And whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's covert, and they're trying to keep the reality away from the local community of what they're actually doing to us. We've now got to the end of the entrance to the camp, we've got cameras, we've got police drones. It's like a cloud that's come over this community.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome back. Just gone 7 o'clock. You would Talk, of course, the home of common sense and the home of the alarm clock Brit. The man or the woman that right now is heading to work in the dark or is just returning from the night shift or trying to get the kids up and ready. It's hard. It's a graft. And you hear all this stuff going on in the world and you think, hold on a minute, why am I the person that's paying more tax, working harder for less and seemingly feeling like I'm not even safe in my own country? 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Morning to Dave in Bristol. He says, Jez, transparency in all those institutions is a given, right? Look at this Labour government, the shady, opaque things that keep piling up. The truths of each one are never going to see the disinfectant of daylight. The snail-paced rape gang inquiry, Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador, the idiocy behind the Chagos debacle, and the list goes on. There are so many murky and sinister issues which, to be honest, are doing more damage and costing to the country, including the royal family, Dave in Bristol. But actually, this is quite interesting because I always read everything. Jackie says, hold on a minute, let's be careful what we wish for. A third-rate president would cost this country far more than the royals. They're on call 24 hours a day to represent an ungrateful and hateful population. I wouldn't blame them for saying get knotted and pushing off. Time to think about consequences of being so judgmental. Keep going, but lay off the royals. Jackie, my old man worked for the royals for 42 years. I'm the biggest royalist in the world, but I'm telling you now that the British public, in their majority, will not accept what they've accepted for years. They want more transparency. You're waking up to Several major news stories this morning. Chaos at the crisis hit BBC. Scott Mills, ready to breakfast presenter, sacked yesterday over historical sex offences claim. And it begs the question, and it will always beg the question, the judgmental BBC that charges £175 a year even if we don't want to watch it, when the light shone on them, it's quite interesting the amount of scandal there is. The National Rape Gang inquiry starts today. Baroness Longfield has already said that it will take months to even work out what areas they're going to look into. One wonders why that is. The French deal, you know, that 500 million a year for policing what goes on with migrants that patently they don't bother doing. In fact, they intercepted only 33% of people crossing last year. That deal is up at midnight. Shabana Mahmood talking the talk, says, I want more, I want targets. And they go, no. I'll tell you, no, I wouldn't give them any money whatsoever. And Starmer, interesting, has issued a 48-hour demand, ultimatum to doctors. If you don't accept the money I'm giving you, I'm not going to employ 4,000 new people in the NHS. Starmer, forget the 4,000 new jobs. Just say to them, you've had 28%. Look at the rest of the country. There's no sympathy. There's no need for this. Do one. 7:05. Good morning, Sean.
Morning, Jeremy. Sean from Grimsby here. Now, let me just get this right so we understand properly. Our useless politicians are going to get a decent pay rise and a cost of living allowance to help them through with the hard times of high energy bills. My next door neighbour, who's unemployed and has been for years, is going to get a nice increase in their benefit money, and they're going to get paid extra child benefit because they've got 4 kids, and they're also going to get money off the gas bills. And yet me, who gets up every morning, along with plenty of others, are going to have to start working extra shifts to pay for our own energy bills. There's just something not right about this, ain't there? Great show, mate. Keep it up.
And I think Sean, let's be honest, we're just waiting for Ian Duncan Smith. He's got a connection problem. But I think Sean has a really salient point. And it's not about trying to criticise anything and everything, but it's just a case that it seems we've reached a point in Great Britain where so many who have either got away with stuff for years or have taken advantage for years are suddenly being questioned. And I think that's a really good thing, because unless we do this, the resentment, and I mean this, the resentment in this country is going to grow and grow. Howard in Suffolk, the BBC does not make incredible content anymore. However, many individual YouTube channels do. The BBC and all mainstream media are dying in front of our eyes. Good morning to Margaret. It does seem, Jez, that we live in a country that so many people in organisation and in the community have no morals, no respect and no dignity. And for me, I think that's very, very sad. Chris is in Cumbria. Morning, Jez. Good to see Peter back. A proper old-school copper. The type growing up had my respect, not like the jumped-up little power trips of today. Yeah, Peter Blexley, great to have him on this morning. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Just having a few problems with Ian Duncan Smith. We will get to him. Desperate to get him on, former Conservative Party leader. Let's go to a voice note. What's the name of this one then, Christian? You're a very nice man. 0344 499 1000. Do you know the weird thing about doing a show like this? This is interesting, right? People in the gallery, when things go wrong, they're like, oh my God. Just talk for 4 hours. I'll click my fingers, watch. Ian Duncan Smith, good morning. Is he there?
Good morning. Sorry about that. The Wi-Fi fell out.
The Wi-Fi's run out, or because the energy costs are so appalling, you've been cut off and it's all Starmer's fault. How about that?
No, I think it's just ridiculous nonsense, yeah.
Ian, every time you're on, people love the common sense from a politician who, frankly, has seen it and done it all. There's so much I want to start with, but actually I'm going to start differently. I want to start with the news that the National Inquiry into Rape Gangs finally gets underway today, chaired by Baroness Longfield. When I read, and most people who listen and watch this, that it would be pertinent to remember that it will take months for them to even work out which areas they're going to investigate, and it could be as long as 3, 4 or 5 years before they get some answers. We know what areas need to be investigated. We've heard all the excuses about not wanting to upset certain parts of our community. I have never been able to understand, and I'm really strong on this, I've never been understand why a variety of people of all levels, not just national politicians, have swept. This is one of the biggest disgraces, Ian, in my mind, in our history. And it is further disgraceful it's going to take this long, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another one. If you go back to the COVID inquiry, you can see what the problem is here, that we set these things up, judge-led invariably, and what happens is that then everybody gets lawyered up, and the reality is the problem that all the costs go spiralling. It slows everything up, and we have this ridiculous problem where we take ages to do this. I mean, if you look at the COVID inquiry, compare it to what happened in Sweden. I think in Sweden they did theirs in 6 or 9 months. They learned any lessons they needed to learn in that time, and they've got on with their lives. You know, we've still got the COVID stuff straggling on, and it'll be the same with this one. We make it far too ridiculous that everybody has to have a lawyer when they go there. That's the first thing. And the second thing is it's up to politicians and government, etc., to try and make it as focused as possible. So much evidence is already out there. There have been individual inquiries taking place. There's been lots of stuff. What we should be doing here is trying to bring it all together and say to people, look, we know that terrible things happen. The question is why and how can we stop it? What went wrong? Why didn't people report this? A very simple set of requirements. Get to the bottom of it. And the government didn't want this inquiry in the first place, so it'll suit them for this to go on and on and on, because it may never come up while they're still in government. This is a real problem for us. It needs to be done quickly, otherwise the victims never get justice, and that's the problem.
As a former party leader, do you believe, and I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, I don't understand it, I genuinely, is this an institutionalised cover-up in your mind?
Well, it's definitely been an institutional cover-up, because we know from some of the inquiries and some of the stuff that we've already learned that, for example, police and council officials didn't want to do anything about this because they were scared about being accused of being anti one particular group of society, anti-Muslim, anti-Pakistan, anti-whatever, because they were concerned more about that coming across than they were about the poor girls that were victimized. In fact, some of the language we know that they used about these poor girls, white trash and all the rest of it, is appalling. That's why we need to get to the bottom of what happened. And it is a very big, it should become a very big lesson to us that if you put special circumstances around groups of people, different ethnicities, whatever, if you allow the law to be different for those different groups, which is what happened here, I'm convinced of that, then you are in danger, deep danger. The law applies to everybody. Look at that statue at the top of the Royal Courts. What you see is it's blind. It's got a blindfold on her. She's blind because justice must be blind. It applies evenly to every single person in this country, whether they be rich or poor, whatever colour, whatever ethnicity. It is blind.
Could not agree more. I mean, again, don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm not frightened to say this. Do you think it'll be a whitewash?
Well, it can't. It simply cannot be a whitewash now, because lessons have to be learned. In other words, you have to realise what's been going wrong, whether the leeway to certain communities has been given to a degree that allows them to have a different kind of society from the one that we have as the United Kingdom. We're all in the same country and we obey the same laws. We may have links to different parts of the world, but when we come here, we have one nationality, and that means everything that applies to you and me applies to them as well.
I agree with you that it can't be a whitewash, but I guess I'm being like a dog with a bone for a reason. I still fear that it will be. I don't have any faith in the system or the process because it's gone on too long, and the bottom line is, you're right, it's about young girls being raped. That's the truth, and I fear it will be a whitewash. I fear it will be dragged out. That's my feeling.
Well, that's what politicians have got to do, is they've got to ensure that this inquiry does what it was supposed to do, does what essentially most politicians that I know, as individuals, as people with constituencies, they want to know the truth. That's the first thing. And secondly, what then can we do to make sure, for cultural reasons or whatever, that this never happens again, and that different groups and different people in society are not treated differently because we're worried about accusations that may be made. You must be bold and brave and always ask one simple question. Who is the victim in this particular case? What happened to them, and how will we stop others like that individual, like that group of people, ever suffering again?
Serene, much written today, front of the Sun, about the BBC, BBC Radio 2 Breakfast. We're into Scott Mill's Acts for Personal Conduct, a historical story. The whys and wherefores will continue to fly around. Apparently, it's quite interesting. It was the last act by Tim Davie before he left as Director General, and there have been lots of scandals surrounding him. The BBC, you'd be what I call a gentleman, somebody who believes in the things that matter to this country. Is it not? Is it not now? And this is nothing to do with Because We're Talk. Is it justifiable as an entity to say to every single person in this country, right, you're paying £175 a year, whether or not you watch us, because we are the BBC. And yes, there's scandal in every organisation, but there seems to be quite a lot of scandal within the BBC, which is in fact ironic. And for me, you add into the mix that it's a state broadcaster and it's supposed to be unbiased, and patently, with the greatest of respect, it isn't. Is this another example of how the BBC, like other institutions, needs to change, needs more balance, needs more transparency, or it will wither and die in front of our eyes?
Transparency is, of course, vitally important, but there are also questions about the nature, I think, of the BBC. How big is it? Is it trying, in a way, to do much more than most normal broadcasters would do who are not state subsidised? There are, I think, questions that need to be asked, and a review, really, of what... I mean, large chunks of the BBC are now in the private sector. You take some of their programming, they sell those around the world, they reap some of that money coming back in. So not only do, I was going to say taxpayers, but not only do those who pay their licence fee, which in a way is a tax, they get little or no say over what they want. And what then happens is they outbid many of the other companies because they have more money when it comes to terrestrial TV. So I think there are issues here which we do need to look at. And so let me give you one example. Newspapers, the journalists that work for that, they uncover facts. They're paid to do that, to dig and to come to those. I always find with the BBC website, what the BBC website does is takes information from newspaper websites, which they need to earn money on, very rarely ever gives attribution as to who actually found that or what that's about. That goes on free to air for the BBC. But the problem is it's really expensive to gather for newspapers working in the private sector. So that's just one good example of how already having the money to broadcast, they then are able to use others who are paid to do it and who have to do work in the private sector, a bit like this radio show right now. You live off what you get from your earnings as a result of having a program that people want to watch. And therefore advertising has a huge critical issue to it. For the BBC, that's not the case. So in good times and bad, they get the same money, whereas the...
But don't you think that affects, in all honesty, everybody knows that the BBC has ventured to the left to a degree. I think anybody would agree that. There haven't been any controls, it seems. They're free to make whatever decisions. Yes, suddenly there's a light upon them. I believe that the issue for that is they get £175 per household. If they had to live or die by their content in terms of how many people watched them and bought for them and paid for them, and there's plenty about the BBC that's great, but there's plenty about the BBC that isn't, they would have to improve their content, they would have to approve their conduct and the people that work for them, and it will be a level playing field. I just do understand the commercial side of radio and television that resents the fact that these people get this money and really don't have to justify it, Serene.
Well, I agree. That's one of the problems about the BBC does everything. It gets the licence fee to be able to do that. The problem is they're competing with the private sector, who don't get that sort of licence fee, that sort of subsidy, and so it's not a level playing field, whichever way we look at it. The question really then is, what should the licence fee be used for? And I've argued for some time that one of the things about the licence fee is that news and current affairs are not very profitable broadcasts. They're not very profitable ways of doing it because they're very intensive. They need a lot of journalists. They need a lot of people involved in it. But at the end of the day, they're not great saleable items around the world, except in moments of crises. So the issue you've got here is, well, is the licence fee about making those things that we need available, or is it about everything being done by the BBC. So if you look at things like EastEnders and various other programmes, they're commercial programmes. So maybe, and I once argued this, you should say, well, for those organisations that do news and current affairs, maybe the licence fee should be to all of those who put news and current affairs on, rather than just one, and the rest is commercial, and you can all compete on a level playing field. That way you get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy.
Couldn't agree more.
Could
not agree more, because I want to move on, but there is that feeling, is there not, that the BBC, because it knows it's got that money, can get away with behaviour, with judgment, with programming without having to answer. I want to paint a picture for you. You're going to be transformed right now. You're the Home Secretary. We haven't got a Labour government in. And tonight, the French deal, where we give them £500 million a year, it's a 3-year deal, is up for grabs. It finishes tonight. I point out to you as the Home Secretary that the French have only intercepted 33% of crossings in the last year. You've just said to the French, Ian, I want targets, and they've gone, no. What happens next? Because I tell them to shove it where the sun don't shine. That's £1.5 billion for what?
Well, I don't think it's ever worked, this money that we've paid to them, because for them, in part, their interest is not necessarily to stop them in France. You know, they'd quite like to see them go somewhere else. And they have a lot of people coming across the borders, particularly from Italy. So they have their own problem with regards to this. So asking them to hold on to them goes counter to their logic. What I would say very simply is that process will never work, I don't think. So what you need is a deterrent. That's what we don't have. And the deterrent has to be what we wanted to do with the boats, which is to send people that arrive here illegally without going through the proper processes. They need to be sent somewhere else. And the Rwanda scheme would have worked. In fact, we saw when it first was announced that many people who were illegal headed for Ireland to ensure that they didn't get sent away. Once they realised it was never going to happen, of course, they came back again. And of course, the key to that is to make sure you change the law so an elected UK government has the power to be able to say to illegals, if you will land on our shore, you will be gone in a matter of weeks or days. And that means changing the law when it comes to the Convention of Human Rights and its application here in the United Kingdom, and to ensure, therefore, that people understand that if they pay the money, and they pay a lot of money to get on these boats, these gangsters are terrible. They get bullied, they get beaten if they don't pay up, and then they risk crossing the channel in all sorts of weather. Many of them have lost their lives to get here. There's no reward when they get here. That's the key point. So it makes everything else illogical and pointless in trying to cross the channel. That's the best way to deal with this, not to ask the French to do something that, in truth, they probably don't really want to do.
Listen, you know, I mean, you always smile. God, you should be the Prime Minister. A great sense again, my friend. You got a week of recess. You're not having a rest?
No, well, no, we've got a lot of campaigning to do. So it's council elections coming up, and we want to make sure that I get my lot elected.
Ian Duncan-Smith, such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much. Former Conservative Party leader, talking about the main news of the day, the BBC being slaughtered. Scott Mills has been axed, and people are saying, is it rotten to the core, and why the hell should we pay 175 quid in a licence fee when we don't watch it? The National Rape Gang inquiry starts today. I just want to take 30 seconds and read you something. We'll sit here and we'll go, it's going to take 5 years. It's an institutional cover-up. They don't even know which areas. They're going to personalise it for Baroness Longfield and everybody who sat there today. I was the unfortunate outcome of a mother who was the victim of a rape gang in Tamworth at the age of 12. I'm now 53. She hated me, Jez, as a result of being raped, and before 6 months of age was endured 6 months of my small life to horrific abuse, sexual abuse. Finally, I got put into care for 5 years, where I endured a further 5 years of constant abuse, and I went from foster home to foster home. Before my mother died, she told me that everything was my fault and she wished she was never forced to have me. That impacted on me, but the truth is this, wherever you are this Tuesday morning, this system stinks, and these rape gangs go back far further than anyone realises, and I want answers. That's a victim, right? And we as a society are sat here debating whether we want to talk about that area or how long. There are kids whose lives have been blighted, and I do not give a damn if this is not popular. I don't care about the colour of your skin or your religion. I certainly don't think that if you're a British Pakistani male in Rochdale, you should be avoided to be questioned or jailed or whatever because it might upset your community. Morality supersedes your colour or your religion. If any girl, whatever colour, in this instance we know it was young English white girls from underprivileged families, from bad backgrounds, right? If any kid has that happen to them, then the person that does that, in my very humble opinion, does not deserve to be at liberty. And if we've got to the point where we're saying we're not going to prosecute because we'll upset whatever community, I think that is an absolute disgrace. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome back. 7:27. We're live across the UK. It's Talk Breakfast, the home of common sense, the home of the alarm clock. 0344 499 1000. The voice note, the ringing, whatever you want to do. Text as well, 87222. Morning to Dan. The BBC and the Blob need slimming down, JK. It's too fat for purpose. The flab, a.k.a. woke civil servants, BBC production teams, middle management in the NHS, armed forces and justice systems all need to go. If we want a healthy economy and country, we need to be paying less tax and not having to deal with such obese organisations. Shane, good morning.
Morning, Jazzmeister. Shane in Bournemouth. Isn't it about time the BBC was just completely axed now? No one wants the BBC. We don't want them around anymore. We don't want to pay for it. You know, me and my mum, we don't even watch TV, and we still have to pay for a TV licence. So, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure there's plenty of families out there which are the same, you know. So, yeah, I think it's time they went.
Thank you, Shane. Whenever we talk about the BBC, there isn't much that I'm in awe of, but my next guest is quite simply one of the best television, it says here, best television presenters ever, not working at the moment, desperate for a gig. Adrian Mills, good morning, my son. How are you?
Always a pleasure, never a chore, Jeremy.
I'll tell you why. You were one of the best, man. That's life was different class. We've always had this debate about the BBC. I'm going to try a different tack today. I'm not really interested in the specifics of Scott Mills. I mean, I can look at this story and go, He was probed in 2016 over serious sex offences against a teenage boy. The police at that point, AD, didn't think there was enough, but this actually goes back to 1997, so this is historical. My two questions initially are, why didn't they look into this when he first got the job? Maybe I'm missing the point. Also, I'm quite interested, it was the last thing Tim Davie did before he left on Thursday. Is it about wiping the slate clean, or is it about legacy? But my question is simply this. The silent majority, this will chill you, I know, are fed up, mate. They're fed up with an organisation that takes our money. They're fed up with an organisation that seemingly seems to have scandal after scandal, and they're fed up with an organisation that's supposed to be balanced and has moved that far to the left that all of us know exactly what we're going to get. He's going to say Strictly to me. Adrian Mills, over to you, darling.
The silent majority are not talking to you about this, Jeremy. They are just going about their daily business, watching TV, and people keep bashing on about this increased television licence. And I don't work for the BBC. I haven't worked for the BBC for 20 years. However, I will defend what they put out there. And I say to you time and time again, it is the cost of a cup of coffee a week. That's all it is. So I don't understand.
But my point is, my friend, the cost of a cup of coffee a week. Why is it not right to suggest, as of today, that the BBC, on a level playing field with the rest of us, if you want to put it like that, and you haven't worked for them for 20 years, you're just an intelligent man, if the BBC is so good, as people like you always say, we talk about traitors, we talk about Strictly, fantastic, fantastic television, I'll pay for that. I shouldn't be told I have to pay for something that is, I think, it's a bit like the NHS. I just think it's not fit for purpose anymore. If it's so good, right, Adi, I'd buy it. What's wrong with that? Why won't the BBC agree to that? I'll tell you why, because they're terrified people wouldn't give them as much revenue as they get now.
I don't think, well, and also, if you look at other products on the market, you would be paying a lot more than your BBC television licence, because for somebody to pay 50 pence or £1 or £2 to watch a programme is nowhere near going to cover the huge, you know, Jeremy, you've worked in television long enough, you know the huge production costs, you know, the crews, the team,
I know with the BBC, oh, come on, Aidan, now we're going to argue. We know with the BBC, they've got 5 people making tea and 4 standing around doing makeup. The television world's not like that anymore. The television world's changed. That's half of the argument, though, isn't it? Television is now streamlined. Christ, radio's streamlined, and the BBC is still this open. You've just brought it up. Maybe it's so obese. Maybe it could make changes in the way that it does its business. Maybe that would placate people a bit.
Well, I think every sort of year or so they have a bit of a cull and they get rid of quite a few sort of people, but I always think they're the wrong people, because I do think that the BBC, I wish I didn't keep seeing my surname on the front page of the Sun, by the way.
I know. What is your relationship to Scott Mills?
I couldn't possibly comment.
No.
But to go back to the very important point here is that I do think there's an awful lot of middle management that actually are on highly inflated salaries. And one thing I will agree with you is when they say, but if I was to work in the private sector, I would be paid this. That's why the BBC have to pay it. I go, I don't think so. Go and get the work in the private sector. We all know, as you just said, TV has been streamlined. Things are very, very different. So there is a bit of a cushion there. And, of course, they've all got nice little pensions to fall back on.
But, I mean, that's my point. You just said about programmes. Say you and I, right, come up today with, as in the old days, we come up with a programme idea, and you take it to a commissioner at a network station, and they'd say, you know, we took Kyle, can you imagine, to a commissioner? I mean, that wouldn't happen nowadays. But, you know, there's your money and you make the programme. To get any sort of green light nowadays, you're not going to get. You're going to have to go with a sponsor and probably lose money and take a sniffle, if you're going to a commercial broadcaster, a sniffle of advertising just to get your foot on the wrong. The whole world's changed. And that's why there's resentment, because the BBC, and you're right about middle management, but this BBC, and they do things good, but they also do things crappily. Let's make that point. But because it's so obese, and because the world, whether it's cost of living, whether it's, I don't know, everything seems more difficult. The price of fuel, the price of food, the price of everything seems... And I think people are going, do you know what? Don't you think, right, it just it needs to show that it can change for people to continue to support it, because if it doesn't, I fear for it. I'm being serious.
No, well, I fear for it as well. And I suspect in the next charter renewal, and negotiations, I'm told by people that work there, are ongoing as to what business model they should be producing. I think you might well find that there may be some form of subscription television, but it won't be across the board. So it might well be, though, you know, picking out something like Match of the Day. Of course, we're all football fans. You know, in fact, actually, Jeremy, you'll be pleased, I've got my West Ham mug right in front of me here.
Are you a West Ham fan?
Of course I am. Look at it. Look, the only time you want to see the name Mills is when it appears on front. Well, I can't even find the camera on my own phone.
If I want to find the name Mills, I'll just hold on. Let's go back to me on the camera. We'll just, there you are.
Yeah, you're all right, mate.
Yeah,
Let it go.
Yeah.
So I think they will cherry pick programmes like that. But I don't want to watch programmes, a drama, with 4 or 5 commercial breaks in it to pay for it. I really don't. And I think the problem, as you said, is in the past, you'd have an independent production company making something for the BBC, and then they would be on some form of retainer to develop new ideas. That doesn't happen anymore. The programme finishes, and then a lot of researchers, producers are then laid off, and they have to find employment elsewhere.
Do you feel that the BBC need a stronger vetting process for presenters?
Oh, my goodness me. If you look at the thousands of people that work for the BBC, I suspect if you went into any organisation and probed as deeply as some of the investigations the BBC have done in the last few years, you would find 1 or 2 wrong-uns in major companies. The thing I feel sorry about Scott Mills at this moment, these are allegations going back 20 years that there was an investigation in 2016 where it was found that there was not enough evidence. So has somebody come forward with new evidence as the person that's involved?
I am not the font of all information, but my experience in these things would tell me, and this is a personal opinion, that the BBC have probably acted to preempt some information that's come to light, which I suspect might filter through in the next few days. I don't know.
And Tim
Sunday
Davey,
newspapers, what hits me in the head, right? You know the score. We know the score, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be my feeling. But I do think interesting that Davey did it on his last day.
Yes.
I do think it's interesting that it was. God, we know a lot, you and me, don't we? I think it's interesting it was released on Monday. To me, I think it'll drip for 5 days and then the Sunday will be. That's what I think, but I could be wrong. But you're right. There was an investigation. He was not found guilty. Yeah. There's obviously a stench from that. The other thing you've got to ask yourself, and I've had this. Why 10 years? Why is this suddenly come out after 10 years? This is the other thing about these sorts of stories, that one has to be, and I think it's important, you know, there are a lot of people in high positions in television who think that they're untouchable. Yes. And we live in a different world, actually, and rightly so. And if you've done something that is not acceptable, then that is going to come back and bite you on the arse, and so it should do. You shouldn't be sheltered from that because you're on the television or the radio. I don't know though, but that would be what I think, Aidy.
I think you're absolutely spot on. And the Sunday tabloids, they'll be all over it. There'll be people digging away right now. But I suspect because of this slightly higher profile with various people, you know, the Greg Wallace, the Hugh Edwards, that maybe this one individual has come forward with new evidence, or somebody has come forward and said, look, in case you didn't realise, because Scott Mills in the last few years has become a very, very high profile presenter. You know, he won Race Around the World. He's now the Radio 2 presenter. He's on an awful lot of money, and actually this is one thing that sticks in the throat, the salary that is being reported, 350,000, it'll be way more than that, and you won't know about that until the next year's
Is that a month or is that a year?
Oh dear Christ, I mean, a month, a year.
I hate the way this question's going to sound, but I know what I'm going to ask it. Do you think the BBC has sat on this too long, and I'm being serious? Do you think it's a cover-up?
No, I think this has probably come to light very recently, this one. And they've decided that, look, we've been here before. We've allowed things to drag on. We've just had the Hugh Edwards programme on television.
Did you watch that, by the way?
I did. I thought Martin Clune's performance was extraordinary.
I watched it on Friday with Mrs. K. I thought Martin Clune scared me in it. That's how good I thought he was.
Yes, I completely agree. You're thinking, this is Doc Martin. That can't possibly be.
Amazing.
But there was one gratuitous scene, which I'm sure you remember, which I thought a little unnecessary. But I think it showed that what a ruthless sort of bullying character he actually was as well.
I thought what was really good about it was that it told it from the kids' point of view.
Yeah.
And in the end, everything that had happened to that boy who had been groomed, he didn't get any justice at all. It was the other thing that snared Edwards. But of course, just to bring it back, you see, there's another example. People are raging, right? Raging that guy is still, Hugh Edwards, on a pension. And he got paid off by the BBC and they sat on it. And I suppose if you flip it, have you read the thing, by the way, that Scott Mills's last day was the day that programme was out? Somebody found that. I suspect the BBC have jumped on the Scott Mills thing because they don't ever want to be accused in the future of dragging it out. Be interesting to see if he fights back with lawyers, though.
Well, if I was in his position, yes, I would at this moment in time be instructing lawyers. But as you say, I know, and the general public generally know, that the Sunday papers usually dig a lot more dirt. This is only the first salvo, and then more comes out as we go on. But I think you're absolutely right. Tim Davie has gone, actually, new person coming in, clear the decks. But I don't hold with this crisis for the BBC. Yes, he had 6 million listeners. Yes, he was highly popular. But I guarantee within another couple of weeks, you'll find something like Sarah Cox is presenting The Breakfast Show.
Sorry, hold on. Sorry, I'm going to have to... Can you hold on a sec? It's the BBC. I've got to go. I'll see you later. Adrian Mills, thank you very much indeed. 20 to 8, talk. Hello, is that the BBC? Hello, how are you? Yeah. Go to a break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 18 minutes to 8. Yeah, listen, I have to tell you this. He's sounding fantastic on Drive. Kev O'Sullivan back this afternoon between 4 and 7. Exclusive to Talk, the home, of course, of Common Sense and the home of the alarm clock Brit as the sun rises over a dull and nippy London. I hope your Tuesday's going well. This is the station where we want your views on the news of the day. 0344 499 1000. What are you waking up to? You're waking up to a crisis at the BBC. BBC Radio 2 presenter Scott Mills sacked over the weekend. Investigated by police in 2016 over serious sex offences against a teenage boy. No action taken, but the BBC have jumped in. My experience, Kev O'Sullivan will tell you. I know Kev O'Sullivan will agree with me, absolutely. This will be drip-fed until the Sundays. There's more to this story. The National Gangs Rape Inquiry starts today. Already they're on the back foot, saying it'll take months to decide what areas to look in. We'll tell you exactly where to look. Rochdale and Bury. Start there and make it about doing right by these young white British girls whose lives were blighted, for God's sake. The French, they're in my sights as well this morning, because you know that deal where we go, have 500 million. Oh, oui, merci, that's my friend. Apparently the deal's up for grabs, so we're going to redo the deal, and Shabana Mahmood said, some targets, please, and they go, no. That's my French. And I'm going to say, no, you can't have the money, you greedy French people. Why have I gone all hello? I should tell this only once. 0344 499 1000. And Keir Starmer, has he grown a pair of cojones? Today he issues a 48-hour ultimatum to striking doctors. You know, the ones that got 28%, was it? And want another 28%? You know, they're all left-wing, don't you? Yeah, the BMA's more left-wing than Corbyn was. The PM says, you withdraw your action, or 4,000 new trading posts will be scrapped. I would say this, Starmer, withdraw your action or I'll fire all of you. You're not going to get any more money because the rest of the country is struggling, you horrible people. Good morning, Jimmy.
Jezza, good morning. It's Jimmy from Halifax, part of Alarm Crop Britain, going from Keighley, West Yorkshire to Holyhead to deliver to a bakery. This migrant deal that comes to an end tonight, very convenient for the government. All that's going to happen is more and more pour in, which they want that to happen, but they'll end up blaming the French because they say that the deal's come to an end. Great show, Jeremy. Have a good day.
7:45, we're live across the United Kingdom. Thank you for all your texts. Jez, the whole point of the licence fee is choice. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. If I don't want to watch it, I shouldn't have to bloody well pay for it. I think that's absolutely right. Linda Cook. Morning, Linda. She's in Worcestershire. Lovely. I love Worcestershire. She said, if the BBC is the price of a coffee once a week and I was served a white coffee when I asked for a latte with pistachio, which I don't, by the way, because it's yuck, I wouldn't pay for it. That's the analogy I want to put to BBC apologists. Morning, Joe. Jez, live your show. I think she might have put love, or maybe it's live. I'm a British Jew. Requiring me to pay a TV licence for the anti-Semitic BBC is like telling a victim of domestic abuse to pay the aggressor for battering. It's wrong on every level, says Rosa from Yorkshire. Great point. I can't afford to buy a coffee a week. I don't watch any TV that requires a licence. That's anonymous. Jez, Yvette Cooper, Mrs Balls, just gave the BBC World Service $33 million over the next 3 years from the Foreign Office budget. So if you buy a licence, effectively you're paying twice. Finally, Kim in Brum. The BBC, in my mind, Jez, is reckless with our money. They don't care that they're chucking it down the drain. Case in point, the rebuild of the new EastEnders set was years behind schedule and went £330 million over budget. 14 minutes to 8. Most politicians are in the middle of a recess, which means they're back in their constituencies, talking to their constituents, going, oh, you'd like your potholes filled in. Oh, you're very upset by that. But this man has time to do everything because he is... well, he's a legend. The Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party said very good morning to Matthew Vickers. Good morning, Matthew.
Morning, Jeremy. Morning.
What are you doing up there, lad? You need an oxygen. You're a bit north, aren't you?
It's fantastic. The air's clean. The people are great. They're sound. They're chitty-chatty.
So what you're saying is in London the air's crap and you don't like any of the people, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, mate, welcome to the show. So it's recessed for Parliament for a week. There's so much, Matty, I want your take on, pal, if it's OK. The BBC, obviously the story is all about Scott Mills. It's about a historical, alleged historical event, 2016, although the news this morning pointed to 1997. My point to you is this. There was a police inquiry, nothing happened. He's been at the BBC for 20 years. Why now? Why Tim Davies sacking him on his last day in power? Not sticking up for Scott Mills in any way. What I'm saying is this the new regime fleshing out and jumping before they have another crisis, do you think?
I think there's two big parts of this, isn't there? I think firstly, you've got to say it was 20 years ago. We don't know the details. We don't know anything about it. So you've got to wonder what the motivations are and whether there is any truth and what the basis of it all is. And we don't know the facts of it. We don't know what's gone on. But at the other end of the scale, I watched that Hugh Edwards thing the other night.
Did you? So did I.
How disturbing. It's absolutely horrific. You kind of think, is it even possible? But then you look at all these people, the BBC, this prized institution, and you look at people like Hugh Edwards, you look at all these national figures that are going down with some of this stuff now, and you just... It's scary.
I think the thing about Hugh Edwards, I watched it like you. I think that the appalling thing about Hugh Edwards, right, is that the BBC sat on this for absolutely months. They did. Martin Clunes, astonishing impression. But it asks so many questions about the power of the BBC, the power of media. But it was the sort of, with him, it was the complete and utter. He doesn't even know that he's doing wrong, and people around him are telling him he's absolutely brilliant. And look, the Scott Mills thing is something completely, but it does beg the question. It does beg the question that is the BBC because it doesn't have to justify its existence, Matty, for so long, has it got more of these people in its midst? Is it overpopulated with people who just don't really care about what comes out? They're just taking advantage of themselves.
Well, we see people complain about the cost of the licence fee, but actually you then see these huge wages that these guys are getting. You see how much Hugh Edwards was in receipt of. And then you think about the fact that we're all paying this money to see some of the stuff broadcast that we see broadcast. We saw the Bob Villain stuff. We all saw all that anti-Semitic hate that they broadcast into our homes, not for a minute, for several hours.
Yeah.
You see a BBC documentary about Palestine voiced over by the son of a Hamas terrorist. And then you see the President of the United States having his speech cripped and clopped and edited in all sorts of ways so it's not representative of what he said. And you kind of think, this is taxpayer money. These people are not justifying receiving it with the standards of broadcast that they have coming into our homes. It's not acceptable. We've got to look again at how it's managed. People need to be held accountable. The thing is massive, huge sums of money swishing around, and the stuff that's coming out of it is not fit for purpose.
I'm waiting for a political party nationally to say, you know, that the BBC is not fit for purpose and the BBC needs restructuring. I mean, I just had this discussion with Adrian Mills, who's offended quite a few people, saying that the cost of watching the BBC is a cup of coffee a week. But he's you know, he's a great man. But my problem is I can't get past, Matty. If I want to, nowadays, if I want to watch Sky, I buy it, right? There's an organisation that is supposed to be our state broadcaster. Let's just wait one sec. So if it's the state broadcaster and I know I'm getting unbiased coverage, I'm fine with that. But it's not unbiased coverage, and there seem to be a lot of people with their noses in the trough, and there seems to be a lot of, you know, bad eggs there. And there are rotten eggs in all sorts of organisations, but it gets highlighted. And when you hear about, you know, you hear about Savile and you hear about Harris and you hear about Stuart Hall and blah, 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 how much of this has been known? The BBC will say nothing at all, but they protected Hugh Edwards. And it just smacks of, if I want to buy something, because I want to watch it, buy it, wear it, wherever I buy for it. I just don't think you can anymore, in the climate we're in where people are demanding so much more transparency, just take people's money, follow an agenda that you want, and just bung out whatever you want. People always say, yeah, but Traitors is great. I'd buy Traitors, but I'm not buying BBC Radio 3's discussion on what's happening in Eritrea with cows or whatever they did the other day. That I was like, what? That's the point. I want to be able to make my own choices, and I think the BBC isn't going to get away from this in the end.
Yeah, you're not forced to buy a cup of coffee anywhere. And you know what? If the shareholders of Starbucks or Costa had the amount of resource that the BBC had and had failed to get along amongst the digital revolution in broadcast, you know, you look at all the Netflix and the Amazon, the amount of cash and resources that the BBC had, they should have been ahead of the curve on all this stuff. They should have been the people pushing the envelope, producing the best output, and competing in that space. Amazon and Netflix were never gifted that sort of resource to start with, but they move with the times. They broadcast the stuff that people want. People bought into it. Imagine if the BBC just had some level of movement, of intellect in order to get amongst that. Instead, they force us all to buy a cup of coffee every week. It probably is that. What was it? It was pistachios and latte. I don't like this posh coffee anyway. It's all rubbish.
No. I mean, yam. I see picture over your left shoulder. Yam. That's what you want. Teesside, here we come. Now, here's a question. Somebody will build something into this, but I won't. If Hugh Edwards did a sit-down interview, would you watch it?
It's a bit like, you know, when you go past those incidents on the side of the motorway and you kind of have to look at it. I mean, it's disgusting, but we've just watched this Hugh Edwards documentary. And actually, it was a bizarre thing to watch because whatever you thought of it, you didn't actually think it would be quite as dark or as devious as it appears in the documentary.
And the irony from that documentary, by the way, is that everything that kid went through in his family, that wasn't the reason that Hugh Edwards got prosecuted. It was because he was passed disgusting, vile images by another paedophile. And I ended up feeling sorry for the kid. But the truth is, and this isn't going to be particularly popular when I say this, he was able to go into rehab, say he was mentally ill, and got away with it. And that is an insult to all the people who can't go into rehab and do have mental illness and have to get on with their lives. And that is not that's something that sits deep inside me. So would you watch it? Yes or no? You would, right?
I think I probably would. I would hate the thought of paying for it. I would hate the thought of contributing it if he was benefiting from a penny of it. But at the same time...
Trust me, if he ever does a sit-down interview, he won't be paying a penny for it at all. The other thing is, which has really gathered traction this morning, Matty, and you're always honest with us, the rape gang inquiry starts today. Baroness Longfield chairing it. They've already said, these bloody people, it will take months before we decide which areas will be investigated, and the whole thing could last past 2029. We know the areas they need to look at. It's an institutional cover-up, and it will fail every aspect of the British people unless they look at the areas they need to without fearing that they're going to upset certain parts of the community. Isn't that right?
It tells us everything that's wrong with our society, that people, this thing has gone on, it's years and years and years now since some of these victims suffered. We found out, 18 months ago or so, that it had happened in 50 towns across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, here we are, 18 months down the line. Nothing done. Keir Starmer scared of his own shadows. We heard from Simon Danchuk, fascinating, how he was told by a Labour MP who was told by his whips not to mention the race of the people involved. Our own fear, our own society's fear of calling people out and upsetting communities and cultures within it meant that we allowed some of the most vulnerable people to undergo some of the most horrific and vile crimes. And here we are, sat waiting for an inquiry, a debate that's been going on months. Those people haven't got the answers that they want. The people who are responsible for this and letting those people down in social services, in councils, in police forces, have not been held to account.
Do you think, are you like me, concerned that it'll be a bloody whitewash? Because I'm absolutely, to me it's one of the biggest stains on our society that this has been allowed to drag on. Not having a go at you lot, but this has been going on for years. And it's not just senior politicians, council officials, people in the police, people in the medical services. To me, children's innocence is the most important thing. I find it abhorrent. I find it abhorrent there's even beginning to be a discussion that it has been a cover-up. It's disgusting.
Well, it's a huge stain on our history that it was ever allowed to happen. It's an even bigger stain on our country that, having known it's happened, having got all the details we got about 18 months ago, about 15 towns, the government has done nothing about it. We can see when government needs to act, it can act, apparently. It jumps into action on all sorts of...
After what happened, of course, with the stat... I agree. It just doesn't get right. One final other thing. Tonight, the deal with the French, 500 million a year, runs out tonight. Mahmoud, we haven't got long, said, I want you to do targets, and they said, no. Shouldn't we tell them to do one?
I think we're getting to that point. I mean, you've got to wonder what value we've got from it. You've got to wonder how many managed to get off those beaches and into our country. Tens of thousands of them. It's at record levels. However bad the last government got it, it's up more than 40%. More than 40% coming in. The number of hotels is up hugely. It was going down before the election. It's now up. And then you look at how many are being sent back. 6% of them. Until we get to the point, common sense is there. We need to leave the ECHR. We need to tell anybody who breaks into this country, who comes illegally, that they are going to be detained and they are going to be deported. Until we do that, they're going to just keep coming in ever-increasing numbers.
We love having you on, mate. Top man. He's always working, never stops. He'll lead them one day. Yes, he will. Matt Vickers, thank you very much indeed. This is Talk Breakfast News at 8. First, though, we'll say a very good morning to James.
This is quite unbelievable. Keir Starmer, when are you going to get it through to your thick head that this has to stop? No more illegal immigrants in this country. This has to stop. Send the Navy out. Stop them. Turn them around. Stop paying the French 600 million, whatever it is. This is an absolute farce and shameful. And this is going to be so dangerous. Thank you, Jeremy.
breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Fancy returning to the front line as Foreign Secretary?
I am going to return. I am going to return.
To
the people from whence I came.
Hello, I'm Peter Mandelson, and I'm proud to serve as His Majesty's British Ambassador to the United States of America.
I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
The Ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
Mandy's out 4 decades and 3 scandals, or 3 that we know about. Guess what? Number 10 knew all about it. They knew that he lived in Jeffrey Epstein's flat.
Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party late last night over the allegation of this $75,000 set of payments to him from Epstein while he was business secretary, $10,000 to his now husband, a photo of him in his pants. This isn't just bad form. There are strong arguments here for him to be facing investigation over misconduct in public office.
I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Breaking news that Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt. This is the establishment, the British establishment on trial. Came to us around about 5 o'clock when we learned that we saw footage of Peter Mandelson being led out of his London home in very exclusive Regent's Park by 3 coppers.
Now we have all these allegations, we have all the documentation related to those allegations, which Downing Street is being forced to put out. The first tranche of it will be early next month.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, gang. Welcome back. It's just gone 8 o'clock. It nearly said 7. We're ahead of ourselves. This is Talk Breakfast, the home, of course, of common sense and the home of the alarm clock. Brit, whatever you're doing this Tuesday morning, thank you for making it talk. It is your chance to put your views on the day's news as ever you can do it. On the phones, on the voice note, 0344 499 1000. The brilliant Christian is doing everything that Christian always does. The not-so-brilliant Damien is answering the phones. I'm joking. He's very, very important. Mark is as ever, reliably pushing things, and Nehar is just class in a sea of mediocrity. 0344... What do you look at me like that for? 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. So much you're waking up to. Chaos at the BBC. The Radio 2 presenter, breakfast presenter Scott Mills, fired yesterday, well, over the weekend. In the last act by Tim Davie, before he left being Director General, it emerges that Mills was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sexual offences against a teenage boy. That's what we know. Why has it taken 10 years? No idea. But it begs so many questions about the BBC. Do they vet their presenters properly? And why in the name of God should we pay £175 a year for something that many of us choose not to watch? Surely it is time for the BBC, whatever its problems, and there are rotten apples in every single organisation, but surely right now is the time for the BBC to show how good its programme is and go subscription. I think that any party would make that suggestion now, because I think it makes perfect sense to the British public. The other big news of the day is the National Rape Gang inquiry finally starts this morning. Baroness Longfield chairing this. Frighteningly, my friends, like me, you might think it's going to be a whitewash. They have already announced that it will take months before they decide which areas to look at. So all the sceptics like me are going, so you're not going to go to the areas where British Pakistani men, for example, in Rochdale attacked young girls because, what, you're going to fear that there will be recrimination. It needs to be without fear or favour. It needs to be wherever it happened, because it's surely about the victims, isn't it? And tonight, you know that deal with the French, which goes, hey, we give you 500 million, right? Oh, lovely. That's, again, my French, not very good. Could you just sit on the beach? No. And just see how many migrants go across. We will do our best. Last year, said Mahmoud, you only intercepted 33%. We did our best. So this year, I want targets. No, I'm not accepting any. Well, you're not getting any money from me then. Useless. What is wrong with these people? Oh, I know. Let's give somebody 500 million quid to not do their job correctly. Don't look at me like that, Christian. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning, Jeremy. Laura in Wiltshire. Glad you got the old BBC dinosaur on to defend the indefensible. We need a choice, that is the thing. I'm reading the paper this morning. I see that the BBC are cutting coverage of landmark events like coronations and funerals, state occasions. So what the hell are they for? People don't watch linear television anymore. I'm absolutely livid that I'll be a criminal if I don't renew my TV licence this year, but I'm really tempted not to. Great show.
Not that we can condone that. Nigel from Brighton, this is really interesting, peeps. The biggest scandal of the BBC is how they influence public opinion towards a left-wing narrative through their dominance of the UK media. I could give you hundreds of examples, but here are just three. COVID and the need for COVID lockdowns with daily scaremongering and the banning of commentators like Professor Carol Sikora, who argued against it. Or how about Angela Rayner's stamp duty scandal, which wasn't reported for 14 days, whilst it was headed in all major newspapers. Fast forward to now, and there was absolutely no reporting on the BBC last week of McSweeney and the mysterious phone theft scandal. And if you're still not convinced, just read the articles Jeremy Bowen has written about Trump and the Iran war. Nearly all anti-Trump opinions rather than facts. Nigel in Brighton, that's my point, though, isn't it? If you want a certain opinion, or you like the way a certain station television or radio does it, you decide to do that. You decide to subscribe. You decide to tune in, right? The BBC, we have an absolute right to question what they produce, because we're being forced to pay for something that actually has its own agenda. If I was to the left, I'd probably subscribe to the BBC. As it is, I think it's bloated. I think it's too opinionated. It's not supposed to be... This is supposed to be opinionated, but the BBC is supposed to be straight down the line. 0344 499 1000. Lots of MPs on recess. Matt Vickers proving what it is to work hard. Here's another lady who always works hard. The First Lady of Reform UK, the MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Oh, I think we're up north. That's a slightly different look behind, isn't it? Is that up north?
We're definitely up north. I'm on my way into my constituency office in Runcorn shortly, Jeremy, but I've always got time for you.
Can I ask you, first of all, Sarah, I'm, like most people, this is beyond me. The National Rape Gang inquiry begins this morning. Baroness Longfield has already announced it will take months before this inquiry announces which areas will be investigated. The whole thing costs millions, could last till 2029. Presumably, there aren't many fair-minded people in this country who do not fear that this will be another bloody whitewash.
Look, when are we going to accept the fact publicly that this inquiry, we know the areas that it should be focused on, and yet this inquiry is saying it's not going to include all areas. So I guarantee you they're going to try and miss out, aren't they? Places where we know are hotbeds historically for these grooming gangs. But also there's an issue about ethnicity as well. When are we going to accept the fact that these rape gangs are predominantly British Pakistani men attacking white vulnerable girls? We need to start from that premise on this inquiry. The British public is absolutely fed up of hearing anything other than those facts, because they are facts. So let's face those facts and let's investigate that. But in terms of 2029, what a joke. So this government won't be in place in 2029. The results of this inquiry, why does it take so long? Other countries can canter along with an inquiry and get it done and dusted.
Ian Duncan-Smith, who was on earlier, said that that's because everybody gets lawyered up and the process takes a long time. I asked him at 7 o'clock, something I'm going to ask you, Sarah. I asked him if he, as a like-minded human being, if you like, or a man of sense, believes, as I do, that this will be yet another whitewash and will fail the victims massively. What is your view? Do you fear it'll be a whitewash?
It will be a whitewash if, as I started, we don't start from the premise that this is predominantly British Pakistani men raping white vulnerable girls. If this government is not prepared to start this inquiry from that premise, then it's an absolute waste of time once again. And I'll tell you what worries me. I read only a couple of days ago that, and let's talk about the London grooming gangs, which Sadiq Khan has been in complete denial about. And yet we hear, don't we, that this Prime Minister is about to make his friend Sadiq Khan a lord. So what we're going to call him, Lord of the grooming gangs, because I tell you what, if he does that, it's another Mandelson-esque mistake on a huge level. And
I would go further, Sarah Poachin, and this is an opinion I stated last Thursday when we broke the news. Starmer is cornered politically. The left, Rayner, maybe Ed Miliband, maybe Burnham are gunning for him. Many people think, after the elections in May. But I would say this. When we look at the national inquiry into rape gangs and we fear that certain areas, and we're talking, there are different areas, but certainly the Muslim area in Rochdale is one that's been accused and there's been proof of that. If we know that certain parts of our society won't ever say those things for fear of upsetting certain people, maybe the cynic in me isn't so wrong to think that he's putting out that he's going to give Khan a lordship and he's going to put him in the cabinet to buy off the anti-Muslim feeling towards this Labour government as they drain away to the Greens. Maybe it's politics he's doing.
It's all about survival with Starmer, but it's too late. He's toast, isn't he? He's gone. The British people won't put up with him much longer. And yes, of course, we know that Angela Rayner is on manoeuvres. We know that Andy Burnham's similar. They'll all be talking. Look, that's the Westminster bubble politics. Yep. But in the meantime, girls are being let down because these rape gangs, this is not just historic. This is carrying on now. This is happening now to girls. And the longer we delay putting in actions, putting in, things that are there to prevent these sort of things happening, and the longer we delay facing who are the perpetrators, then girls every single day are being raped. And it's an absolute disgrace that this campaign, this investigation will go on till 2029, because how many more girls will be raped between now and 2029?
I couldn't agree more. And when I see Sadiq Khan, when I see him he'd never be interviewed by me, but the question to ask Sadiq Khan is, we know why you're denying the facts that there are rape gangs operating in London. Everybody knows that, and yet you refuse to accept it, and you would then be accused, exactly like Starmer, of having political motive behind your answer. Can I ask you also, I painted a picture, I did it with Ian Duncan-Smith, I did it with Matt Vickers, I'm going to do it with you. You are the Home Secretary, just waking up in a dream. Today, you go into work at the Home Office and you know that deal with the French, that migrant deal whereby you give them $500 million a year for 3 years, is falling, it's finishing tonight. You had some contact with your French counterpart and you said, if I'm going to renew this, I want targets. And they went, no. On a serious note, this is a joke, isn't it? What's your take on this? Why are we paying £1.5 billion to a neighbour to do something they're not doing? That's ridiculous.
I would say pas de poisson. There you go. You've been doing your French all morning, but I would say no
Do
fish.
I need to dump that? What does that mean? What does it mean?
It means no fish. So that's what I would do. I would say you're not having any of our fish. You're not fishing in our waters until you stop these people coming over.
No poisson. No poisson.
Pas de poisson.
Pois de poisson. Right, that's good. Okay. I want to bring it round to this main news story that is on the front of every newspaper, sir, about Scott Mills. It's beyond Scott Mills. Listen, this is... he was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sexual offences against a teenage boy. No charges were brought. I am in no way sticking up for Scott Mills. I think there's too many people in the BBC who've got away with it for too long. But... did they know about this when they first took him on? Is it not slightly fishy that... fishy? No. That Peter... what's he called? Tim Davie on his last day in the job got rid of Scott Mills. Is it a new broom, a new era? I don't know. But for us, the bigger issue this morning is the BBC isn't fit for purpose, is it? It needs to be forced to modernise, because why should we all pay this money for something that we don't choose to watch? If I'm going to watch something, I'm happy to pay for it.
I couldn't agree more. You know what? I'd be happy to watch potentially some of the BBC dramas that come out. Although I have to say, this latest one, Capture, is another left-wing propaganda pile of nonsense, isn't it? But the point is the BBC isn't fit for purpose. It's meant to be a proud British institution. Well, when did the BBC stop being proud of being British and proud of being everything that we stand for in this country? Because it isn't anymore. We can see in the fact it's cut its coverage and its team of, you know, national state occasions. That caller, or the lady that left the message earlier, she hit the nail on the head. If the BBC is no longer covering state occasions, what is the point of the BBC? Because that's the only reason any one of us would watch it now. We say, oh well, it's a royal wedding. Let's watch the BBC. They get the best coverage. But if it's not even doing that anymore, there's no point. And listen, you know, I shouldn't say this as an ex-magistrate of 20 years, but do you know what? Quite frankly, I'm not sure I could criticise anybody that doesn't pay their licence fee anymore. Why would you want to pay a licence fee to an institution that does not uphold British values?
Listen, I can't condone not paying the licence fee. You'll understand that, but I do feel that with so many parts of our society, and I was talking about this earlier, be it the rape grooming gangs, be it the BBC, be it the NHS, be it education, be it the royal family even, I think there is going to be an increasing demand, Sarah, from the silent majority for greater transparency. I just don't think that this huge entity that the BBC is, that survives with £200 billion of our money, that gives us a right to say, why don't you vet your presenters? Why don't you put out more unbiased content? If I was slightly left-leaning, I'd probably subscribe to the BBC, right? That's the point. But all people ever say to me from the BBC is, what did Adrian Mills say? It really hacked people off. Oh, it's the cost of a cup of coffee. Or they'll go, Traitors is great and Strictly's great. Well, I'll pay to see Traitors if I want to. That should be my choice. I just think that so much about the BBC has been allowed to happen because they've just been allowed to crack on without any due process or being responsible to anybody. They are the BBC. I think they need to be brought to account. I really do.
How ironic, you know, you watch Laura Koonsberg ask Yusuf on Sunday morning about our vetting process. You know, you'll find, in our hundreds and hundreds of councillors that we're putting up generally, are we doing our vetting properly? And then, well, hang on a minute, BBC, what about your vetting process for your presenters? You know, you are talking and influencing the minds of thousands and thousands of people, you know, with these presenters on whether it's radio, whatever it might be. Well, where's your vetting process?
You'll love this from Joanna in Salisbury. She said that, Jez, the only reason I can watch Talk TV and see your white crisp shirt and Sarah Pochin's honesty and pristine kitchen with flowers is because I pay the bloody TV licence. What's particularly annoying is Talk doesn't get a penny of it, but the BBC do. That's my point. This isn't bitterness from a commercial television and radio station. We survive on our content and people buy adverts. But I don't understand why there is one entity within this business that doesn't have have to justify jack about itself or its content, and that is the huge issue. Finally, before you go, striking doctors. Starmer's grown a pair of cojones. He says, if you lot don't withdraw your action, 4,000 new training posts will go. I don't mean to be rude. I'm missing the point here. How is cancelling 4,000 training posts going to hack off junior doctors who are left-wing and rabid and just want more and more money? Why doesn't he just say, you're not getting it, I'm going to bring in a law in that bans you from striking. Go and save people's lives because the public are hacked off with you.
Look, you know what, these doctors, isn't it interesting that they're planning their strike on the 7th of April and Easter, it's the Easter weekend, isn't it? So, they get a nice long weekend.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a 10-day break. Is that till the following Monday, cheeky?
Yeah, so 10-day break. I'm sure they'll all, if they're not on the picket line, they'll all be...
in Mallorca with Mummy and Daddy, yeah.
Exactly. Look, I've got absolutely no sympathy. And yes, we do, of course, need the 4,000 specialist training places. That's why a lot of doctors go abroad, because we do not have enough money put into the specialist training areas. We all understand it, but it's not going to be fixed by, giving them their 26%, whatever it is.
They've already had 28.
Yeah, but the BMA is far left. It's far left. It's a bunch of... I'm sorry, but often when you look at them on the picket lines, thugs. I'm not sure if I'd even want them to.
I think they look like they need a wash and to eat something other than lentils. I think they look undernourished.
I'm sorry, but, no. The answer is absolutely no. Get back to work. You're doing this because you think you can hold the British people to ransom. Well, it won't happen because inevitably the government has to be firm. West Streeting has to be firm. Stop pandering to this nonsense. Get them back to work or sack them.
It's quite interesting, actually, just to finish. You noticed it wasn't Streeting who made that announcement. It was Starmer. Those two palpably hate each other now because Streeting tried to oust him. Thank you, as ever, for joining us. We love having you on. Sarah Pochin, first for Reform UK lady, Runcorn and Helsby, the local MP, 8:20. Danny, you haven't been listening properly. Please stop saying the French intercepts as if they stop the illegals. They don't, they escort them. I didn't say intercepts. I said, and I quote, they've only intercepted 33%. Oh, I see what you mean. Well, all right, stuff it. But here's one. This is good for you. Dear Jez, Lizzie in East Kilbride, loving the show. I've never heard of that Adrian Mills before, probably because I don't ever watch the rubbish BBC, but how dare he compare buying my licence fee to buying a cup of coffee? I'm not forced to buy a coffee, nor am I held down and made to drink it either. It's my choice. What a stupid analogy from another out-of-touch old relic. The only people defending the BBC are the ones who benefit from us being forced to pay their wages. Morning, Matt.
Morning, Jeremy. Matt and Hove here. Now, I've got a cunning plan how we can actually get rid of the BBC. They're talking about an allegation against Scott Mills from 10 years ago. He was working with them then, so... Are they suggesting that they never took out any DBS checks or enhanced DBS checks for their employees that would have been around vulnerable people? They have to do that by law. Now, looking back at all of the disgusting paedophiles that have been working at the BBC, I don't think they ever conducted any DBS checks. So let's find out. Let's get rid of it.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. His WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:25 Tuesday morning. We're live across the United Kingdom. Julia's here from 10, Ian Collins from 1, and Kev on Drive from 4 o'clock this afternoon. That's your talk lineup, whatever you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000 in a minute. Ross Clark, the columnist for The Sun. Right now, let's cross to Westminster. Shadow Energy Minister Andrew Bowie on Talk Breakfast. Andrew, good morning. Sorry? That was a strange noise. It's all right, it's fine. Andrew, can you explain to the heathen that is me and the people that listen how we've got to... I read a really interesting article, and I can't remember what paper it was in this morning. I think it was in... Hold on a second. It's about... No, it wasn't there. It's about Miliband, right? Because there seems to be, across every spectrum, I'm just talking about your party, all parties, energy companies, regulators, punters... Everybody says, so we're 130 billion we're spending every year on interest on debts we can't service, and yet we've got this huge resource, liquid gold under the sea. Not only will we not do that, but I was reading this article that says that, which is even more frightening, Norway's doing it, right? And we're actually paying more for them to buy it off them because the bloody wind farms don't, than if we drill. And I know we can talk about this again and again, but politics needs, I always think, to sort of connect with people. I'm telling you, the majority of this country think this is barking mad, and that this man is on a personal ideological mission which is going to bankrupt us still further.
He is. He's an eco-zealot, and he has captured this government. The Prime Minister's too weak to do anything about it. We're living in an Ed Miliband government, and as a result, we've got ourselves into the absurd, perverse situation where we're preventing British companies employing British workers, generating revenue to the British Exchequer, from exploring and drilling for new oil and gas in the North Sea. By the way, some of that could be on and into the British gas grid by Christmas if Ed Miliband was just to give its approval. So because of that, we're having to import more gas from Norway at a higher cost and actually at a higher carbon footprint to keep the lights on and industry running in this country. It's absolutely absurd. And what we are seeing, and I'm speaking to you actually from Aberdeen this morning, is a situation where companies are laying off workers to the tune of 1,000 British workers every single month. We're depriving ourselves of upwards of £30 billion in tax revenue, and we're seeing companies upping sticks and moving elsewhere. By the way, they're moving to every other country in the world that's got an oil and gas basin that is not in hock to the eco-zealotry of Ed Miliband. How we've got ourselves into this situation, frankly, is a weak Prime Minister unable to do anything about his Energy Secretary, who's frankly out of control.
Well, we noticed in the Commons last week, it was a Conservative Party, maybe, I don't know, somebody asked a question, and he basically said, well, that's not my remit, that's the Energy Secretary's. And there was me thinking, you're the Prime Minister of a, with a huge majority that can make decisions. He's undoubtedly handcuffed. But my point about Miliband is, when every single expert and every single sane person is going, yes, of course the carbon footprint, but we release, what, 1% of carbon emissions? The rest of the world doesn't seem to give a toss. Go to China. My friend was telling me yesterday he drove from some part of China to the other, and all he went past was, coal burning, and that was it. we make no sense. I'm just amazed that Miliband... I mean, I don't know whether his policy is supported. They always throw this stuff at Andrew, don't they, where they go, 70% of people don't like, worried about the climate. I think there's worried about the climate and let's bankrupt ourselves on the altar of an ideology that makes no sense. And then the stuff he inherits, I was reading, is not is not sort of eco-clean and friendly anyway. But he goes, well, it wasn't made in this country. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. And of course you can be worried about the climate, but far better, surely. By the way, even in the most outlandish, fanciful, extreme scenario of Clean Power 2030 or Net Zero 2050, even the Climate Change Committee itself, who, by the way, are no allies of the Conservative Party when it comes to our new energy policy, predict that we're going to need gas as a mainstay of our energy supply. So why not get that gas from British waters? Why not get that gas from the UK? Why not get that gas using British workers and generating revenue for the British Treasury? I just don't understand it. It's totally perverse. And by the way, it's not just the Conservative Party saying this, or Reform, or others. It's the unions, the GMB, Unite. It is Renewables UK, for goodness sake. It is GB Energy, the head of GB Energy, the very company Ed Miliband set up to drive renewables investment.
You mean Jurgen, the man who's never been seen?
Even Jurgen is saying they should be drilling more in the North Sea. So when you've got even Jurgen Meyer telling Ed Miliband he's got it wrong, surely Ed Miliband needs to change course, but he won't, because it's his own personal vainglorious mission to be the man that shut down oil and gas production in the UK, and nothing that the Prime Minister can do can stop him, because the Prime Minister isn't hot to in Miliband and is too weak to get rid of him.
It's quite interesting the way that Starmer approaches this. So today's called an emergency COBRA meeting. I always thought COBRA was if we were at war. Over the crisis, I've saying the government can't do it on its own. This is because fuel prices, diesel's hit £2. He's now... This is what really annoys me and what I will call out every morning. If you watch an interview with Starmer now, everything is the war in Iran. The war in Iran. And we know that that's had a detrimental impact on the price of oil and the price of gas. But the truth is these problems were there before this crisis because of exactly what you've just said about this zealotry, this madness with net zero. And I find myself, it doesn't make sense to me how we're allowing a man to bankrupt this country still further. Doesn't make sense.
We've been saying this for about the last 2 years, well, certainly the last year and a half since Kemi became leader. I've been saying it for far longer as a Member of Parliament for the part of the country that's worst hit by Ed Miliband's zealotry, given that it's people in this part of the world that are losing their jobs directly as a result of it. But it is just madness. Look at we've just seen growth for the last quarter of 2025 at 0.1%. Imagine what we could do if we unleashed the North Sea to produce as much as it could, maximising recovery, employing more people, generating more revenue, driving growth and investment into this country. In fact, what we're seeing is the complete opposite. Companies are running from the United Kingdom. It's far too expensive to do business here. Energy costs are far too high. And even companies that want to invest and want to drive growth are being told, well, you can do that, but you're going to pay a tax rate of 78%. We're not going to let you grow. And frankly, we'd rather get more dirty gas and oil from Norway than we would from our own waters. So why would you invest in the UK right now?
I mean, to be honest with you, Andrew, I've long thought that many politicians don't make sense, but this is perhaps the most fuddled, nonsensical decision. And I think it's a disgrace because it's playing with the economy and it's playing with people's lives. Just before you go, two things. The National Inquiry into Rape Gangs starts today. Baroness Longfield, I'd love your response from the Conservative Party. They're already reporting that she said it will take months before it announces which areas. This could last till 2029. Looks like we've learned nothing from the COVID inquiry. We know the areas, but we're going to have... Do you fear that this will be a whitewash like I do and they will avoid certain areas because they're keen not to upset certain parts of the community, which is in no way to do this, is it?
Hope it's not a whitewash. I think that we need to ensure that this inquiry gets to the root of the problem. Nobody, regardless of their position, be that in a certain community or in politics, is given carte blanche and cleared by this inquiry. It needs to take as long as it needs, but 2029 seems to be an incredible length of time.
But the reason I said what I'm saying is we have examples in this country now of two-tier policing. There are hate marches in London where people wave the Palestinian flag and set fire to the Israeli flag, and I saw a man walk past with a Union Jack and he got arrested for being divisive. We have a situation in this country where a senior-ranked police officer from Rochdale told me 3 years ago the reason, Jez, it's taken us 8 years is we don't want to upset certain parts of the local community. We have MPs who stand and beat Labour, and have now joined the Greens, who say we're only interested in Gaza. My question, I suspect, means this. 83% of the victims in Rochdale, young white girl victims, it was British Pakistani men. That's not racist, that's a fact. That's a documented fact.
Yep.
But the police were too scared to be too quick with their whatever their investigation was for fear of unrest. We can't live like that going forward, can we, Andrew? We can't.
We can't. Justice is supposed to be blind, and policing in this country is supposed to be conducted without fear or favour to anybody, regardless of their position or which community they come from. So it's really important that this inquiry does what we expect it to do, after months of pressure, by the way, from us on the opposition benches, pushing for this, forcing Keir Starmer to relent and actually hold this inquiry. Apparently this morning we're hearing that the terms of reference have been expanded and they are going to look deeper than they were, which is a very good thing. It should take the time it needs because we need to get this right, but 2029 seems to be taking far too long, given how quickly they react when somebody tweets something that might be deemed as being offensive these days, or is stopped from, as you said, waving a British flag in the centre of London. So, no, it's we'll be keeping a very close eye on this inquiry indeed.
Good man, great to have you on, and good luck in Aberdeen. Those people up there deserve total respect because they're losing their jobs. Andrew Bowie, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000, 25 to 9. Page 10 today. Great article. Stupidity of energy policy. Lift fracking ban. Reopen coal-fired power stations. Allow North Sea oil licences. How Labour should tackle the fuel crisis. Ross Clark, very good morning to you, sir. Columnist, you all right?
Good morning, Jeremy. I'm fine.
The Labour Party don't agree with you. This is Keir Starmer. There's nothing to panic about here. Here's Keir Starmer about buying fuel.
I recognise the concern that this is causing people. Fuel duty is frozen until September, and the advice from the various sectors is just normal use. No need to do anything other than what's normal. But obviously, we're bearing down on energy costs.
So, Ross, on the day that diesel hits £2, on the day that your article and Andrew Bowie quite rightly call out the zealot that is Miliband, when we've got this liquid gold and he refuses to use it, it gets to a point where you just... I mean, he's having a Cobra meeting about the cost of petrol. Why don't they just start drilling? It's ours and we'll be debt-free. It makes no sense, man.
Yeah, and all the government seems to have been doing so far in the last few days is trying to blame petrol retailers for jacking up the price of petrol. Price gouging, according to Ed Miliband, and Bridget Phillipson also used the same term, you know, as if we're being ripped off by garages. Well, you know, there are a few rogue garages out there which charge far more than others, but the profit margin of petrol retailing is something of the order of 10%. That's what the Competition Markets Authority worked out just recently. That's not a huge profit margin. I mean, if you're going to invest in a risky business, you need a decent return on capital, otherwise you're not going to do it. But don't forget, when you fill your tank, about half of that money is tax, and not only half of it tax. The government is still committed, as Starmer admitted there, to increasing fuel duty by another 5 pence.
Ross, do me a favour, because to bring some balance, because Ed Miliband just won't come on. We'll sit here and we'll say this makes no sense. You've got only an asset which could stop you having to pay billions in interest on debts you can't service. But more than that, it makes no sense to say we're not going to drill, but the Norwegians are drilling next door and then we're buying it off them. So what is Miliband's argument as to why we're better off following this policy, which ends up with us importing oil and gas at a greater price? What's his argument?
Well, he keeps trotting out this line, and others do as well, that if we allow more drilling in the North Sea, it'll make no difference to prices in Britain, oil and gas prices in Britain, because it'll all just be sold on the global market, the international price, and so we'll just be paying the same anyway. But it's a completely fallacious argument in the case of gas. I mean, you can say that there's a global oil price, but gas prices, there's no global gas price. The wholesale gas prices vary enormously from region to region because it's difficult to store and difficult to transport. Wholesale prices in Europe are about 3 times what they are in America. Now, if you injected more local gas supply into the European market, the price would fall. It's simple. supply and demand. And Ed Miliband is just cannot seem to get his head around this, or he doesn't want to. He just keeps trotting out this same.
Even though it's going to bankrupt us, he keeps trotting it out. Yeah, even though we only release 1% of carbon emissions, even though the rest of the world's busy getting on with their lives, it's extraordinary that we've got to this point. And I fail. It's a great article. I just fail to understand why they can't heed what you're saying. It makes no sense. But there on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, is a man who, presumably, we can say this, Ross, doesn't care about the future of this country in terms of finances. He cares about his ideology, and he's prepared to die on the altar of that, right?
Yeah, he's just got this fixation in his head that he must reach net zero electricity grid by 2030 and overall net zero by 2050. But I mean, the thing is, it's not a sort of meaningful target, because we're importing more and more of our electricity now via subsea cables, and some of that electricity that we're importing is coal and gas fired. But it doesn't count on British carbon budgets. It counts as sort of zero.
That's what I'm saying. So he's happy to have the stuff here as long as it's made somewhere else and he pays more money for it. Gee, honestly, I really appreciate you coming on, and I urge people to read it, but it just makes no common sense to me. None whatsoever. I'm going to buy something for somebody else at more than dig my own, which is sitting there. But morally, I don't want to dig my own, because that's just, honestly, Ross, I don't know how you do it. Great article. Thank you for coming on. Ross Clark, page 10 of The Sun, lifting fracking ban, reopening the coal-fired power stations, allowing North Sea oil licences. That, says Ross Clark in The Sun, is how the Labour Party should just deal with this energy crisis, because we can all see what's happening. Hugh Edwards, I watched the programme on Channel 5 over the weekend with Mrs K. It was extraordinary. Morning, Paula. Morning, Paula.
Morning, Jeremy. It's Paula in Liverpool. Great show. I can't believe Hugh Edwards is even contemplating doing an interview and trying to relaunch his career. But don't you think that that's because of all of this? Let's not send paedophiles to jail. It makes it seem more acceptable somehow. And he feels like he's okay to come back into public life. He should go away and crawl under a stone. What a horrible human being. And he thinks that he should be on our TV screens again. Go away. Thanks, Paula in Liverpool.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Busy old show this morning, 18 minutes to 9. We're live across the United Kingdom. A very good morning from Talk. It's the home of common sense and free speech. You're waking up to chaos at the BBC. Scott Mills, the breakfast presenter, fired for historical sex offences. He was accused in 2016 against a teenage boy. No charges, but the BBC dispensing of his services overnight last Thursday. Lots of people asking, does that not just shine a light on the BBC and its vetting processes? And more than that, why the hell are we paying this money, or are we forced to pay money for something so sordid? The National Rape Gang inquiry starting this morning, of course. Already criticisms that it's going to be a whitewash. And my other favourite story of the day, I'm going to share with Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Good morning, Robert.
Morning, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
So here's a little scenario. You're French and I'm the Home Secretary. You want to get... Let's not do this. The fact of the matter is the French, let's be perfectly honest, have had a 3-year deal, Robert. They get 500 million a year. That's 1.5 billion in 3 years before that person agrees to intercept, to stop people coming here. They patently don't. They stand there and have a cigarette. When there's a camera on, they stick a knife into a rubber dinghy. It's a complete waste of money. So Mahmoud, who tends to talk the talk, not sure she does the walk or is allowed to, says, I want targets. And they go, no. I'd tell them to shove the deal where the sun don't shine, wouldn't you?
That's absolutely what I would do. And I actually think talking about deals with France has been a bit of a waste of time for the last couple of years. And if you actually look at the figures, between 2025 and 2026, the number of boats that they are stopping has fallen as a ratio of the number of crossings that are actually taking place. So the standard that was already low is somehow plummeting even further. And actually what we need to do is move towards a strong deterrent policy of detention and deportation of anyone crossing the channel. The problem for Labour is, of course, that they won't even countenance such an idea, and their whole strategy was based on piecing together lots of little deals with lots of countries, and France being a key partner in what their strategy was going to be. And the fact that they are now struggling to even renew this prevention deal with the French is really indicative of how little attention they've been given to the issue, and actually just how ridiculous their policy was from the get-go, because there are so many points of failure and we're so reliant on other people. It's time that Britain started to solve its own immigration crisis, and it does that by detaining and deporting every single one, not throwing hundreds of millions of pounds at the French to do absolutely nothing.
It's almost like a dereliction of duty. I mean, I've said this until I'm, carried off as the care home. I don't understand how, and I don't mean to sound too patriotic, actually I don't give a till. We're an island, right? We fought 2 world wars for our independence. Whatever the sceptics think, it was decided to leave the European Union so we could stand alone, and yet we're not able, willing or prepared to police our own borders. And look, everybody always throws in the ECHR, Robert, understandably, and then you get the critics going, well, if we leave it, if we say goodbye to it, only Russia and Belarus. Every other country in the world's ignoring the ECHR. We know that Italy is, France is in part. We just need to grow a pair and say, look, we've for long been these moral leaders of everything correct, but we're skin and we can't afford it, and we're too soft, and we're going to have to toughen up. People don't like the thought of that. They don't, when Thatcher came to power, when even Blair came to power, somebody with some sort of direction, somebody with some sort of impulse to make it better. We're not surrounded by politicians like that. We're surrounded by politicians who govern, as I call it, by focus group. What do you think if I did that they would think? Real leaders go, I don't care what you think, I'm doing this for the good of the country.
Well, the concept of national interest has been completely forgotten by politicians of this government and the former Tory government as well. And instead, what they're focusing on is all these abstract ideas of human rights and international law and fairness and justice and all this kind of nonsense that, frankly, at this point in time, Britain does not have the luxury to be able to distract itself with. We have an absolute crisis at our borders. We're closing in on 200,000 people have been come across since 2018. Keir Starmer now is the worst Prime Minister in history for small boats crisis. And
sorry, can we just hold on a second? Sorry, can we hold on? He's the worst Prime Minister in history for what?
For small boats coming across the channel.
I'm sorry, I thought he was the worst Prime Minister in history for everything. I do apologise.
Well, I think that's a fair description as well, although Theresa May has a lot to account for as well. But in general, this is a Labour government that inherited a crisis and have poured gasoline on it. And rather than actually take any of the necessary measures that we're now seeing the centre-right parties of Britain talking about, Labour are still going gung-ho down this piecemeal strategy. And this is why when you see things like the border czar, Martin Hewitt, resigning, the chap that was meant to be negotiating this deal with the French, have realised it's all falling apart in front of our very eyes. We don't hear smash the gangs anymore because they've realised that's a failure. Everything they base their policy on has fallen apart, and unfortunately it is the British taxpayer and British towns and cities across the country that are going to suffer.
Listen, I completely agree. And being on the front foot, I mean, this is interesting. Listen to this. I'm actually convinced now that France are like our enemy. If the ball was on the other foot, I'm confident we would not be sending boats across the channel for them to deal with. They're just out to see how much they can gain to our country and how much damage. And you have to do that because £1.5 billion over 3 years, you're not actually achieving anything. And I think it's a really, really relevant point. But there doesn't seem to be the will. I mean, look, you're right. Here's the thing, Robert. They don't mention smashing the gangs anymore. Almost every speech he ever gives now, it's blaming the war in Iran. The next thing we'll have is this will be tied to that. I just don't see where anybody... I don't get why nobody in politics seems to be able to sort this out. Everybody tells me, you know, it's about will. Is it? It's just not right, is it, that your own people are suffering because other people are coming into this country? That is not far right, it's not racist, it's just a fact, right? I'm sorry, I haven't got enough food to go around, but you must have your Great Britain. No, we're on our backsides, actually. Food's going through the roof, petrol's going through the roof. We're going to have to make some stark choices. Robert, thank you very much indeed. Top man, 10 to 9, live across the UK on Talk Breakfast. Craig, good morning.
Hello, Jeremy. Craig from Manchester. As a Sky TV customer, if I do not want certain channels on Sky, I opt out of having them, and Sky scramble them channels so I can't watch them. But if I want them, I pay for them and I watch them. So why can't we choose not to watch anything on the BBC and they just scramble the channels like Sky do, or like Netflix or any of them other providers, Paramount Plus and whatever? We should be able to pick and choose if we want them. Why should we be forced to pay to watch constant repeats and left-wing nonsense?
Okay, that's my point, Craig. You know, if your programmes are so good, if you think Traitors, think Strictly, all those sort of things that are synonymous with the BBC, if it's that good, buy it. But I don't think I should have to pay 175 quid to watch something I don't personally choose, as the business has changed. 0344 499 1000. Much royal news this morning. Delighted to be joined. Last time he went viral, this man, former head of Royal Protection, Di Davis. Di, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Wow. Almost everything that many people, you and Lowney and other people have said, is starting to come to pass. Beatrice and Eugenie, who are increasingly being dragged into the furore over their parents' relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This morning we hear that they are going to miss the Easter church service after the Andrews scandal. Rupert Bell told me this morning it's convenient for all sides. But the pressure and the light is being shone on these two girls, and there is increasing proof that they maybe are up to their necks in a little bit of as well, Di.
Well, yes, when I heard this news, the cynical in me said, I wonder what now the royal family, the king and his advisors have been advised. And it seems to me quite clear they are trying to put some blue water between the royal family as a whole and these two. And as you rightly say, Andrew Lowney and indeed myself have said there's sufficient evidence to look at some of their dealings over the years, and particularly in respect of nearly £1 million or over £1 million they received collectively from a variety of what I would call dodgy people. So unfortunately, I think the investigation by Thames Valley Police should now extend not only to the two daughters, but also their mother. And where is she, I wonder?
Well, I heard some bizarre, crazy theories over the weekend that she's in California, she's in a remote Scottish island. She has not been seen, I think, since before he was arrested almost. But you read these stories that she's in America trying to hawk around a book. I mean, here's a question for you. That's her last roll of the dice. I'm sure a publisher, whether they agree with Sarah Ferguson or not, will publish it because it will go through the stratosphere. Are they going to try and keep her on side for fear of that book if it came out or not?
Well, I don't think it's a matter now for the royal family. I'm hoping that Thames Valley Police, unlike the Metropolitan Police, have some gumption and they actually will go after anyone where there's the evidence. And I've been saying this for many, many years. You should go as an investigator where the evidence takes you. And unfortunately for her and her daughters and, of course, her husband, it's alleged that all of them, in one shape or another, have taken money. If you and I had £1 million put into your bank account, trust me, Coots would be onto you, and indeed HM Customs. For some reason in this country, nobody at that level seems to be investigated, and questions need to be asked of these authorities along with the Trade Department. All these people knew that they were up to because the two daughters were traveling with them. They've used their royal connections to make deals themselves. What deals are they up to, one should ask, and how did they come to be done through a variety of different Arab nations, and indeed the gifts they received? And while I'm on gifts, there should be now a clear book where you show if you get paid a £500,000 jewellery, as the Queen has and as the King has, can we have knowledge of that, please? Because an MP, apparently you have to show it. So why don't the royal family have to show these gifts? Because some of us would say this is not right.
Well, Dintry, a couple of questions for you. The first would be, Beatrice and Eugenie, do you believe that they've exploited their positions for money?
Well, that would appear to be, it's an allegation made by some. I don't know sufficient detail. What I do know is that they are involved in a number of deals and have got those deals through their connection through their father.
Yeah.
And it seems like day follows night. If that's the case, then surely they should be looked at as well. It's an allegation, and in fairness to them and their father and everyone else, they're innocent until they're proved guilty. But boy, isn't there a stink?
Well, it's interesting. Clemmy Moody in The Sun today, Di. I've talked about, you've talked about the bodyguard situation. Andrew Loney's talked about the Yorks. I think we all agree that for the monarchy to survive, an institution we all love, there's going to need to be greater transparency. Some people will say for it to ever start again, Charles has to step aside. He could use the ill health. I don't know. She says in The Sun today, the royals, unfortunately, are going to have to end the mystery of their hidden millions. Who exactly is paying for their opulent lifestyle, the arts, the cars and all that? We know about the civil list, but we're living... I mean, I had last week more complaints. You know when Andrew put that bloody mobile thing at the back of his house in Sandringham? People apoplectic going... Cost of living, I can barely afford my shop. And he's got a chef and a valet when he's been best friends with a convicted paedophile. That's the sort of thing that people are thinking and saying about the royal family that they never said before, my friend.
Well, if you go back in history, they said the same about the Georges. George the second, third, fourth, and then William. He was a little better, William, the Sailor King. But no, you're absolutely right. I think we've reached a stage now when the rest of us are suffering to the extent that we are in terms of our finances, then surely there has to be clarity. There has to be a new direction. And that direction has to be an openness and transparency, as you say, to actually show the rest of us that their value for money. And that's the issue for all of us these days. We don't have a premier that gives us value for money. And I'm sorry to be political, but I'm aghast at the way this country is being run down. I really am. I'm proud to be British, as I'm sure you are. But we're now led by a bunch of you-know-whats.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. And in those moments you want, this is a really important point, you want the stability of something that you've known in your lives, like the royal family, but that's being shook to its very core. Do you think, I mean, I meant to ask you this question last time you were on. I mean, Andrew's very strong on this. I talked to you then about, you know, Wood Farm, and he's in exile, Andrew, in Sandringham, and people saying to me, bloody exile with a chef and a valet. Very quick question. Do you think the problem the King's got, he's got to get him out of there, but he's got to fund him? Do you think he's complicit if he's funding Andrew's lifestyle?
Well, I think it's more than complicity. It's what he has known since 2011, when allegedly they put a crisis team together. It's inconceivable to me that nobody in the palace, particularly the King, and I'm sad to say probably William, aren't aware and have been aware for a long time of the allegations being made. You don't pay £12 million as a family to anyone if you haven't done a bit of due diligence on the persons and the issues, events. That's what I say. Let's have a common sense. We've had a smokescreen now for about 14, 15 years. Aided and abetted by the establishment. It's time now, as Andrew says, and I've been saying for many years, for everyone to come clean. And if that evidence shows that others in the palace knew about this and have aided and abetted Andrew for many years, then I'm afraid there's only one option.
Great to have you, Di. Love having you on. Lovely to meet the other day. Thank you very much, Di. Di Davis, former head of Royal Protection. It's almost 9 o'clock. The news is next on Talk.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned, and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram, and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning, and unfortunately, conflict. This is Talk War, and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, here you are. Welcome back. Just gone 9 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Talk, of course, the home of common sense, the home of, well, Alarm Clock Brits, the views, your views on the news of the day. What are you waking up to for Tuesday? Is it the 3rd? Oh, my God, tomorrow is April Fool's Day. I'm not looking forward to coming in. Absolute chaos at the crisis hit BBC as Scott Mills becomes another scandal hit presenter to be sacked. Just to give you a timeline, because there's lots being written about this. For me, it's a bigger picture, but it emerges that Mills was basically allegations of an incident reported to have happened between 1997 and 2000. He started in local commercial radio before he went on to national radio. The police investigation begins in 2016. That's a long, long time. Mills was questioned by the police in 2018, but the threshold for prosecution was not met. They dropped it in 2019 due to insufficient evidence. But, of course, that's leading everybody to say, but you were at the BBC for 20 years, so they didn't know about this? So there must be something new. Experience would only tell me this, my friends. I suspect that this will drip, drip, drip across the media and there'll be a major Sunday splash. But what it has done in you is ignite a debate that I want to have every single day, which is whether the BBC is fit for purpose. Its output is biased, and we're supposed to pay 175 quid to watch something many of us choose not to. Is it not time, my friends, for the BBC to be put on the same level playing field as the rest of us, which means you have to buy or watch or pay or listen to an advert or whatever? It's just, to me, they've got away with it too long. Your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. The National Rape Inquiry finally beginning today, 9 months after it was announced. Baroness Longfield sharing it. And worryingly, for those of us who fear it might be a whitewash, the inquirers already say it could take months before they even decide which areas to look into. You have to look into all areas where abuse took place, even if you're concerned that that might upset certain people, I would say. And I was going to do the French story. I'll do it very straight, because we've had an anonymous complaint this morning, and we're going to instigate a new feature called Complaint of the Day. But the French, we have this 3-year deal with them, and we give them 500 million a year, which is 1.5 billion pounds, which is, by the way, more than we would have saved by freezing all the old people. Anyway, Shabana Mahmood, as it runs out tonight, has said, no, we're going to have targets, because you've only achieved 33% of your targets, and they've gone, no, I am not oh, I've done it. Oh, anonymous complaint, play.
Whoever the producer is of Talk Radio, the French accent and the Arthur Askey 1940s musical carry-on humour, God, it's making me want to turn the radio off. Please stop that.
No, absolutely not. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves. It's life, isn't it? Carl Turner on the way. Listen, he's entitled to his opinion. No, I do not know. Why can't you do that? You did on the lower low. 0344 419 1000. So many with so much to say about the BBC. Shady, good morning.
Morning, Joe. Shane here. According to the BBC, if I want to watch a live stream, doesn't matter if it's Channel 4 or any other channel, I have to pay the TV licence. Well, I wouldn't mind paying the TV licence and £175 a year if the BBC was going to give a certain percentage of the TV licence to those other channels for me to watch them, but they don't, which I think is a con. So really, I think something there should be done whereby the smaller channels, they get a portion of the TV licence. I think it's only fair, isn't it? Hey, have a great day. Bye.
I think that's the point for many, and this isn't the ramblings of somebody who's not at the BBC and is in commercial broadcasting. The fact of the matter is, even when I was at ITV, you survive on the people that watch or listen to your programme and people buy adverts. The BBC's model, which is we're going to get 175 from all of you, irrespective of either what we put out, it might be biased or it might not, or whether you want to watch it. And I just don't understand the argument which goes again. I mean, I would be saying categorically to the BBC, if your output is so good, which it is in many instances, let's make that point. Let's think about Traitors. Let's think about Strictly. Let's think about Traitors. Let's think about Strictly. Let's think about Traitors and Strictly. But what I'm saying is if you wanted to buy those, you buy them. It doesn't mean you're being forced to pay for an amount of money when you don't watch that stuff. Let's go to Nick in Northampton. Good morning, Nick. How are you? Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Jeremy. Yeah, I just, I mean, you mentioned just 2 programmes there on the BBC. It's just not what it used to be. It's just not what it used to be. It's corrupt. The scandals that have happened over the BBC over the past, 10, 15 years. Do you know what? I don't pay anymore. I haven't paid for, a couple of years. And I've done it legally. I've done it the correct way of going. I rang them up, actually, and they went through all the rigmarole of cancelling it. But eventually I got through to cancelling it, and I haven't paid since. So people can cancel their licence legally. They can cancel it. And I think the BBC is horrendous. I think their programmes are nowhere near as good as what they used to be. And I said to the wife, we don't listen anymore. I mean, what they did to Steve Wright on the radio, that's when I finished with Radio 2. And I said to the wife, look, I do not listen or watch BBC anymore. So why am I paying for something I don't use?
I think that's the point. And I think the other real issue is that for many of us who are old, you're not as old, right? It was the go-to national voice. It was the national broadcaster There is absolutely no doubt, and this is not from somebody on a television and radio station that freely admits it's, you know, gently to the right. Some people would disagree, but that's the truth. The fact of the matter is, you know entirely what you're now going to get at the BBC. Somebody made the point earlier, the Morgan McSweeney phone theft, that the Chief of Staff of Keir Starmer, something that looks like, in the words of Dan Hodges at the Daily Mail, the biggest cover-up since Watergate, wasn't even mentioned on there. It was on the front of every newspaper for 4 or 5 days, not mentioned. I believe that editorially, the BBC is no longer unbiased. I think that's your issue. Apart from the money, I think the output is heavily biased. Heavily biased.
Absolutely. And because of that, and because of everything that's happened over the few years, I mean, come on, you remember the 90s, even the noughties, where you had amazing dramas, amazing comedy that you just don't see anymore. They don't dare go near comedy because you'll offend somebody. It's just not what it was, and I'm not paying for something I don't use.
Couldn't agree more. Really good to have you on. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. God, there's so many text messages. I feel like we should get them in. The BBC licence fee is mandatory and not paying it is a criminal offence, says Deborah. Comparing it to the price of a cup of coffee each week is pathetic, but the difference is if I choose not to buy a coffee, I'm not fined or prosecuted. Although that last guy said there's a legal way of dealing with it. You'll notice that I'm basically filling because we're having problems getting hold of our good friend Carl Turner. Terry's in Birmingham. Morning, Jez. These eco-zealots go on about all this clean electricity whilst millions of homes and businesses still depend on gas and will for years to come. Drill, baby, drill. Did I tell you last week about my 8-year-old grandson who went into school? His mother got called my daughter because in the middle of a lesson his teacher asked him something. He's 7 and he went, "Grandad says drill, baby, drill." Brilliant, good lad. Thank you, Terry. Viv Thomas, the deal with the French should be, I better not do a French accent, for every migrant we return to your shore, we pay you £2,000 you accept, and the bonus is you have access to out fishing. Why should we have to pay for them when they're not helping us? It doesn't make any sense. Loads of people. Mark's in Swansea. Mark, good morning.
How you doing, Jeremy? You okay?
I'm good. Apparently, you're one of those weird people. Oh, you worked at the BBC. Oh, how did you do? What did you do?
No, I didn't. Sorry, it's my an ex-girlfriend of mine.
Oh, is that why she's an ex?
No, different story.
Okay.
But she had worked in private practice and then went into the BBC in Cardiff.
Yeah.
And if you ever see BBC offices slap bang in the middle of Cardiff, you want to know where the money goes, just Google it. Their office building right on Cardiff Bay. Have a look at it and show people. That's what you're paying for. But she said that effectively the way they did the accounts in there was so complicated with the amount they apportioned to like BBC One, BBC Two, whatever like that. She said there was over 600 accountants, and she reckoned with some very sensible outside practice, she could have got it down to about a dozen.
See, you see, how often do we hear in these big organisations, with the influx of trying to... We used to joke about, you'd drive down the road and be 5 people to fill in one hole, not that you see any, 2 having a cigarette, not that anybody tries to fill in a hole. It's just expansion. Do you agree in terms of the argument that they're supposed to be the national state broadcaster and it should be unbiased coverage as well?
Oh, of course, it's...
but it just annoys me. Don't get me wrong. You say, of course, we've all learnt to accept this, and it's fundamentally flawed, isn't it?
Yeah. I haven't paid my licence for about 7 years, so,
Not that I'm condoning that, peeps. I'm not allowed to. Mark in Swansea, thank you very much, Steve, talking about an ex who used to work at the BBC. Oh, look, there's Scott Mills with the teddy bear. 0344 499 1000. It's Talk Breakfast. You're waking up to that news. The BBC crisis hit BBC. His questions are starting to be answered, not just about Scott Mills, but about how many... Well, is there any vetting process at the BBC? Does anybody know? Is there anybody out there who's worked for the BBC or turned down by the BBC? Or are you one of those BBC people that could defend it until the cows come home? What are your thoughts on the National Rape Gang inquiry that opens today? Do you, like me, think it'll be a whitewash? And do you think we should say no to the French and they want to renew that deal? Why is I'm doing well here. Beat. Why is non-payment of a TV licence to the BBC a criminal offence that surely means the government are complicit in every decision the BBC makes? And that includes the employment of filth and wrong-uns. It's an interesting text, isn't it? Filth and wrong-uns. Morning to JB in Aberdeenshire. I suppose the only good thing about the racket that is the BBC licence fee forced payment is that watching their lamentable output is not compulsory. I think you've missed the point. Vincent's in North Yorkshire. Hey, Jez, what's that BBC Homes Under the Hammer rubbish? Who the hell watches that? It's been on telly for years. Total utter rubbish, but we pay for that. World gone mad. Thing is, Vincent, not many people used to watch Homes Under the Hammer. There used to be something else on the other channel that people watched all the time. Scott Mills, who's that? The local Tesco manager? This is a media-lovey interest story. No idea what that means. Jeff, sending the Navy into the channel. Oh, we're flipping from the BBC to the Navy. Sending the Navy into the channel would be pointless. The same people would be given the orders. We would just get images of warships acting as ferries and people would turn on the Royal Navy. Where's that come from? I'm not reading that at all. And Andy in Liverpool, give me a decent speedboat and a long pole and I'll bloody well stop the boats just as they leave France. I'll do it for a fraction of the cost. So instead of 500 million, Andy in Liverpool, Andy the Scouser says he could sort it all out. Is this a voice note? Is this Sharon? Morning, Sharon.
Morning, Jez. So everybody is telling Ed Miliband that it's bad what he's doing. What is he in charge of the country? I think he is, because surely this man, one man, not hundreds, thousands, millions, one man is telling us that we can't do what we need to do, and all the rest of us are all going, oh, all right then, we'll just not do it. Can't somebody just go in, get him by the scruff of the neck and go, no, we're not doing it anymore, let's get on with drilling. It is absolutely crazy. Good show, Sharon from Yorkshire.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China, conflicts brewing in all of their different regions. They're not waiting. But here in Britain, our armed forces are underfunded, they're undermanned and they're underprepared. And nobody in government wants to talk about it. Well, we do. I'm Philip Ingram and I spent my career in the world of intelligence, military planning, strategic planning and unfortunately conflict. This is Talk War and this is where we analyse the conflicts shaping our world.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, my friends. 9:20. 0344 419 Carl Turner just to tick. Mick, good morning, my friend.
Morning, Jezza. Great show. It's not difficult on how to deal with these channel migrants. It is absolutely as simple as no benefits, nothing. If we've got to feed them, pack lunch, job done. Get rid of them because they are ruining this country, diluting our culture, attacking the citizens. It is almost like an absolute true invasion. I can't believe what the politicians are doing. No benefits, no housing, nothing. They will stop coming overnight. They're not coming because they speak English or they want to meet a relative or they're escaping war. They're coming to fill their pockets.
Hard to disagree with that. Now, although he's 20 minutes late, we give him a degree of credit for turning up at all. The Labour MP for Hull East, the legend that is Carl Turner. Carl, word reaches me that you smashed your laptop, which is quite ironic because you're part of a government that said they'd smash the gangs, man, and you didn't manage the second one, did you?
The laptop's not smashed, but it's not working, Jeremy. I apologise for being late, but it's great to be with you as always.
Well, I can use the same analogy, that you haven't smashed the gang. Your government's not working anymore. I'm not having a go at you. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm all right, Jeremy. Lovely to be with you.
And you, my friend. A lone, sensible, common-sensed voice in a sea of mediocrity that is Labour. Mate, loads to throw at you today.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in the specifics of the Scott Mills case. Apparently it's ongoing. He was investigated by police in 2016 over serious sex offences against teenage boys. I think this will drip in the papers. There'll be a big outpouring in the Sundays. I think we can leave that alone. What it has done, Carl, is beg two questions from the viewers and listeners this morning. One, the BBC's vetting processes aren't very good. And where do you stand on what I believe, just my thoughts, is a ridiculous out-of-date system? They're getting £175, and I'm not just saying that as a commercial broadcaster. Surely the BBC has to be put in a position where it has to play on the same level playing field as the rest of us.
Well, I think the licensing arrangement has to be reconsidered. I think people are complaining, and rightly so. A lot of the stuff that people watch now is streamed on their devices, laptops if they can get them to wear, or whatever other device they use. And I think people are really cheesed off about what they think is, a payment for something that they don't even bother watching. However, I think it's important to have a state broadcasting, if you like, because I think TV and news and information that gets to people is important. But I think the licensing situation has to be considered.
What do you think of their output, the state broadcaster? I mean, I freely admit that talk, you know this, is to the right a little bit. You're good enough to come on. We have different views, but we can have a good chat. I'm all for balance, actually. I do my damnedest to do balance. But the BBC, for 5 days, didn't talk about McSweeney. You took aim. Every single newspaper mentioned it. It wasn't on the BBC for 5 days. To me, that smacks of an agenda, which, yes, you can have on a station like this that you choose, but it doesn't sit with me in any way on a state broadcaster. Do you understand that?
I do understand that, actually. I think the local stuff is better, actually, but the reality is, whichever party's in government, the opposition of that party believes that the BBC is unfair and biased towards them, actually. That is what tends to happen. When we were in opposition, I would complain that they'd not covered a particular point that I thought was important for the opposition to push. So what the BBC says to that, I've met with them, by the way, what they say is, well, if you both complain, we're doing the right thing. We're doing it right. Well, I'm not so sure that's true. I think the BBC locally in my area is very good in terms of the radio, but not very fair in terms of the BBC Look North regional news programme. That's my view. 3 MPs in Hull have all complained about the what we consider is to be unfair and biased in some occasions towards other political parties. But what they say is we're doing it right if people are complaining.
What do you think about the vetting process? Terry in Sickbourne says, read the BBC scandals. If you go back 30-odd years, there was the Jonathan King scandal, and here we are 30 years later on, and it's still happening.
Well, look, the BBC have got a lot to answer for in terms of the historic failures in terms of presenters and so on. I think Hugh Edwards was, fairly...
Have you watched that, by the way?
I've not watched it yet, but I'm told it's fairly gripping. And I think, they've got a lot to answer for in terms of vetting. You have the Jimmy Savile scenario as well, which seemed to be somebody getting away, which was with grotesque criminality, actually, for many years in plain sight. I mean, how on earth did that happen? People ought to have known. People must have suspected, and nobody blew the whistle. And that's a problem, isn't it?
Completely, and you do question their vetting process, mate. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, couple of things. French, the deal with the French, whereby your government gives them 500 million. It started before your government. I'll give you that. 500 million a year. That's 1.5 billion over 3 years, which is more than we would have saved by freezing all those old people. Anyway, here's the thing: Shabana Mahmood, who I think talks the talk, not sure she's able to walk the walk because of the Parliamentary Labour Party, but she says that if we're going to renew this deal, you need to have targets. And they've said completely and utterly, no. That's my French impression. Carl, you're part of the Labour. Why are we giving the French £500 million a year? We could build 2 prisons with that, to a country that is laughing in our face and doing absolutely nothing to quell the tide of people coming willy-nilly into this country.
Well, I think the truth of that is, Jeremy, we're trying to do something, but we came into power in 2024 with a manifesto commitment to smash the gangs. Look, we've done a bit. We've done a little bit. I'm not defending the government entirely, but there have been some intelligence stuff that's been done. There has been other sort of security aspects which are happening down the street.
Listen, we're friends, but you got to give me more than that. Even your head border, even the guy that you employed in charge of borders has resigned, saying it's a joke.
I know. But we're not doing what we need to do. That's the truth. And the reality is the French are laughing at us, I think. I think they are. I think they're just sort of saying, look, you're not supposed to be getting across the channel, but just walk in that direction for a bit and you might get away with it. But
do you know, Carl, that I see this as another example, like I see the BBC, and I'd love your take on this, bud. I see it as another example of an institution or a part of us taking the out of us, and the silent majority, whether they're Labour, Tory, Reform, Liberal, Democrat, whatever it is, across the country going, hold on a minute. Well, I never knew about this, but now I do. It's not fair, or I've known about this for years and I've turned a blind eye. But now, because I can't afford to put fuel in my car and I can't afford my weekly shop because it's gone through the roof, I'm a little bit annoyed about this. I just think there's a greater awareness about the unfairness of so much.
I think that's fair. I think people are really getting very angry about their own situations, the fact that it's difficult to manage, it's hard to live, and they see people coming across and taking the mickey. They have all sorts of benefits. They don't actually, but that's what people think. I mean, they're not given much to live on, these people. They live in a...
Well, they are given a 4-star hotel, which is better than a tent in France, pal.
Well, if you're in Hull, you can't book an hotel unless you go for the poshest hotel, because the other 3 hotels are full of... people who are there as temporary stayers, apparently, is how it's described. But, that is true, and people are begrudging of that. But look, what do you do? I listened to your last callers, I finally got online on this iPhone, and they say, well, don't give them anything, don't let them live in anywhere. I mean, where would they go? They would go on the streets, I think. And
but you and I would disagree. I wouldn't let them into the country. I've said what I would do. I would absolutely recondition a huge liner. I don't know if I've ever said it to you before. I would train a crack team over 3 months. I would pick every person up from every boat before they set foot in our country. I would, in a very professional way, take 24 hours to process them. If they're allowed to the country for good reason, red carpet. If they're not, you're going to a detention centre. I'm sorry, that is no way. People will go, oh, my God. You've got to start talking... People have always lived off the human rights of others. I get that, but what about the rights of the British people? And I would say to these people, if they went to a detention centre, I bet you any money in the world, Carl Turner, very quickly, with the advent of mobile phones and everything, people would look at that and go, Christ, because I think we're too soft and I think we're too easy. And that's another example of where I think, you know what, finally people are going... They don't have to be far right or far left. They're talking common sense, which is, hold on a minute. Of course I care about other people, but I can't care about other people to the detriment of me and my family when these people have put nothing in and I've worked all my life. The old man always used to say to me, you pay your stamp, right? If you've paid your stamp 50 years and you ain't getting jack and other people are getting more, you're going to be annoyed about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people do feel like it's people are having advantages over them when in fact they're putting in the system doing the best. I think there's a better way of dealing with this. Shabana Mahmood has got good ideas, I think, but pretty serious. I think there's some in the Labour Party who are not happy with the ideas because they're a bit too far in their view. I do think, though, indefinite leave to remain is a thing which people need to be looking forward to. If they're here on indefinite leave to applying for indefinite leave to remain, it's because they've gone through the system, they've passed the test, they've got the right job.
My argument is if they want to come to this country, speak the language, pay tax, have a job, build a business, welcome them with open arms, but there's a legal way to come. Before you go, can I ask you something on air? Don't have a go at me. We have Generic on to answer questions, and we have other... I want to do Call Carl when you're back in London. Yeah, you up for that?
I'm happy to have a go at that, Jeremy, very much.
They love having you on, mate, and we really appreciate your time. We really do. Carl Turner, good man. Labour MP for Hull East, 9:30. We're live across the United Kingdom. Today is also the beginning of the... the rape gang inquiry starts today, 9 months after the inquiry was announced. It's chaired by Baroness Longfield. It's reported already it will take months before they will announce which areas will be considered. Police officers who failed, these terms of reference have just come out, police officers who failed to investigate Asian grooming gangs will be held to account, we hear, by the public inquiry into the scandal. Baroness Longfield has pledged this morning. She said some officers have been reluctant to act because of concerns about how it may look. However, she has just said, and this is breaking news, the inquiry will not shy away from directly investigating the specific ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of the perpetrators behind grooming gangs, which is great to hear. Great to hear. Hope it's seen through. There are cynics. I'm one of them. But if Baroness Longfield is good for her word, maybe finally we'll get some answers. I'll tell you about a man. There are many people who want answers. One of them, and we're delighted to have him on. Marlon West is the father of a grooming gang victim. Marlon, welcome to Talk Breakfast. How are you?
Morning. I'm fine, thank you. Frustrated.
Yeah. Can I ask you, because take this job away a minute, just man to man. How the hell, man, do you live with that? Seriously, respect you to even come on.
It's really difficult. You know, I guess in some ways my therapy is doing this and campaigning because there has to be change. However, from what I've learned this morning, I doubt very much there's going to be change.
Let's talk, if you're happy to, not happy, but tell us briefly your story.
So my daughter, Scarlett, she's in the media, at 14, was groomed, trafficked all across the country, mostly Bradford, from 14 to 18. I had to put her in care. I've said this before. That gives me nightmares. It's the worst thing I have ever had to deal with, putting your own child in care because you recognise you can't keep her safe.
Was she safe in care?
No, she wasn't safe in care at all. She was sexually assaulted in care as well. And one of the placements she went to, which was local, they trafficked her from that placement when she was 17.
How old is she now, mate?
She's 21. She's doing really, really well.
How's your relationship with her?
Really good, if I'm honest with you.
Good.
It possibly wasn't while she was being groomed, but we're extremely close.
For anybody who's listening to this, it's hard bloody work being a parent sometimes. The reason I wanted to get you on is I, like you, for people like your daughter, I'm not giving up on this. Baroness Longfield this morning says that police officers who fail to investigate Asian grooming gangs will be held to account. She says that they will not shy away from directly investigating, Marlon, specific ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of the perpetrators. I've said it until the cows come home. I don't care the colour of your skin, your ethnicity. If you think it's okay to groom and sexually abuse a girl, you don't deserve to have liberty in my society. Can I ask about, I mean, is this an issue with your particular story with these Asian gentlemen? Were they white men? What was the story?
So they were all Muslims. I know there's a lot in the media about British Pakistanis' heritage. 80% of them were, but the other 20% weren't. But what was common was they were Muslim men.
What do you do when, I mean, I interviewed a police officer years ago who said to me, the reason we've taken it really slowly, Jez, is because, let's be honest, you know, it'll create, a bad reaction amongst the local community. As a father of a victim, how do you respond to that?
It's disgusting. Going back to what you said, it doesn't matter if they're white or Asian. They should be investigated, arrested, put in prison so other children are safe. It doesn't matter about ethnicity one little bit. And that's what I get really, really angry with.
In terms of this morning, the inquiry, the terms of reference where she says, I'm going to directly question people irrespective of ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds. Do you welcome that? But you came on and you said you have your reservations. Why?
Because, again, I think it's going to be a postcode lottery as far as where the inquiry will investigate. Obviously, I speak to survivors all over the country, especially parents. A lot of these girls have not even had an investigation. That is the same for my daughter. They've been investigating her case for the last couple of years, and I'm presuming if it isn't a clear investigation, then they won't target that area as far as the inquiry is concerned.
That doesn't really sit with what Baroness Longfield said this morning. Do you? You'll be able to help me out with this. Somebody will shout in my ear. She takes charge of this today, Baroness Longfield. Are prosecutions? Can this lead to prosecutions, or is it suggested prosecutions? And if so, do you think there will be?
I've said this before. With what's gone on with the inquiry, I have absolutely no faith. I welcome prosecutions, and I hope there is. But I feel it'd be really doubtful. Again, a lot of these survivors are not as recent as my daughter, and the historic, and they haven't even got the data anymore with local authorities and the police. And I know that speaking to them because they've done subject access requests, and they said the information's been destroyed.
Do you think that grooming is still going on in your area and in this country as a whole?
Absolutely. This is still going on now. I still have new parents contact me. And I'll go as far as to say it is worse now than it's ever been.
God. Can you, maybe you can't, forgive me. I've always done this in a certain way. Just obviously your daughter, and that's impossible for me to even handle. I'd probably be serving time right now. But to me, from the outside, Marlon, this is one of the biggest, abhorrent, most disgusting stains on us as a society. We talk quite rightly about the post office scandal. This is, they tell me this. I mean, we're not just talking about senior politicians. We're talking about people of local, medical, police, social workers. How? This is my thing. How in the name of God can these people look in the mirror at night and go, I was in any way a small part of covering up young girls being sexually abused whose lives are then blighted forever? I don't understand it. I don't understand why society doesn't want to clean itself up. I don't.
I think a lot of the time with professionals, they are terrified of calling something out and it being perceived as racist, and then them losing their jobs.
But wrongs are wrong. Wrongs are wrong. Immorality is immorality. Yeah, exactly, so it shouldn't be about the colour of your skin, should it?
Shouldn't. But that's what's happening, because as far as like civil servants, we're under such pressure to be politically correct, and we cannot call out factual information.
Well, I will on this station. We'll call it out, and it gets criticised. But I was going to say, to me, it's black and white, and it is. The truth is this, right? Yeah. A young girl is taken advantage of, whether she's from a troubled environment in care or whatever. She's groomed. Men take advantage of her, and then she's dumped, and her life is, in many instances, destroyed. Those men have perpetrated one of the most heinous crimes. But in cases that you've just, there is proof that because of the colour of certain people's skin, we don't want to, I don't want to live. I don't understand that. I don't understand the morality. When you speak to these people, Marlon, who are so stuck up on, you mustn't open the door for a woman because that's sexist, and a woman can have a penis, and people that can have same-sex change rooms. Why are we not going? These are young girls whose lives are being ruined. I don't care where you come from, you're going to jail.
And a lot of these girls, what I speak to, they're more angry and upset with people like social workers and the police because they went to them for safety and they did nothing. Every single survivor I speak to, they all give me the same story, including my daughter. These were the professionals who should have been there to protect them, and they just turned a blind eye.
Is your daughter supportive of the work you're doing, Marlon?
Massively, yeah.
I think you're brilliant, and I think to have just the way you started it, Jesus, I was thinking yesterday, it's very easy for people to pass judgment. It's bloody hard being a parent sometimes, and I think what you're doing is brilliant. Our best to your daughter, and mate, keep the fight. You'll always have a home here on Talk. I promise you that. All right.
Thank you very much.
Good man, Marlon West. Just from a personal point of view, his daughter was a grooming gang victim. The inquiry today announced by Baroness Longfield, and this breaking news about her terms of reference. She says that police officers who fail to investigate Asian grooming gangs will be held to account by the public inquiry into the scandal. She says the inquiry will not shy away from directly investigating the specific ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of the perpetrators behind grooming gangs. But there is naturally, right, real cynicism because this has gone on for years and years. Please, God, we get some answers. What is it, 20 minutes to 10? This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm sorry, there's the funniest text in the world about the BBC. Welcome back to Talk Breakfast, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Morning, Jez. In a nutshell, the BBC have done to themselves what they did to that national treasure, A Question of Sport. As a culinary analogy, the BBC used to be like a full bloody English breakfast. Now it's now force-fed truffles on sour bread toast with shiitake mushrooms drizzled with goodness knows what. I hate them. Shiitake, you try saying shiitake mushrooms. There you are, look at them all looking. They're just waiting for me to say something else through there. Morning, Al.
Morning, GK. Big Al from Swansea here. Regarding Scott Mills, what a lovely guy. I want you to ask yourself, where has this been for the last 10 years? What I think is someone's suddenly woken up, probably in a coma for 10 years. Oh, I'm writing a book now. I want someone chuck some dirt to someone. So probably make him 100 grand, but I'm going to destroy his character, his livelihood, his family, everything. Absolutely disgusting. Scott Mills, we've been listening for years. He's fantastic. And we've all done things in our past we should not happy about, but, you know, we're all human beings. But to wait 10 years and suddenly, oh, what's going on? Get a grip, humanity, for goodness sakes. Shut up.
Always good to have Christian's dad on every morning. The problem is, we don't know the points of... we don't know the truth about the story, to be perfectly honest. And what I can tell you categorically is this. Drip, 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 drip all week. Big Sunday exposure, I would imagine. I suspect, Christian's dad, the reason that it's hit now is maybe somebody's come forward with some new information. What I think is really interesting is this was the same day as the Hugh Edwards documentary went out on Channel 5. So did somebody feel empowered, or was it timed? I have no idea. Here's a man, a former BBC journalist, and is the only man to ever really interview me. Andrew Gold, Heretics podcast legend. Good morning, sir.
Morning, mate. What a brilliant interview that was on Heretics with you.
Mate, you were great. You were absolutely fantastic. Love your work. Fantastic. Can we start with the BBC? I know you're a former BBC journalist. I'm sort of looking at it differently. You heard what I just said about Scott Mills. Listen, I don't know the details. People are saying, well, if it was 10 years ago, actually we've heard out that it was an incident happened between 97 and 2000 when he was on commercial radio. Why now? Why wait? Did the BBC know when they employed him? Blah, 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 blah. Two things for you. What does it say about the vetting process of the BBC? And more than that, most people watching and listening to this morning are going, this is another reason why I'm sick to death of paying £175 a year to be told that I have to watch stuff that I don't want to watch. Why don't they end up being on the same level playing field as the rest of us, pal?
Yeah, well, the vetting process, it looks like, I mean, you'd like to think nowadays that's a key part of it, because for too long, a major part of their recruitment process, let's say, has been asking who your parents are, how much money they make. If they make too much money, you can't be employed. If you're the wrong skin colour, you can't be employed. If you're this and that, they focused so much on that they let actual real harm come through potentially. I mean, not necessarily with Scott Mills. We don't actually know what's gone on there. I've been asking all my celeb mates, what do you know? And no one seems to know anything except what we're being told, which is that it was some sort of historic crime. And we're all going, OK, why today? And I think we'd all like to know a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... I mean, what I also found quite interesting, pal, interesting's probably the wrong way to describe it, was that this was the last day of Tim Davy's tenure. Did you know this? So Tim Davy left at 6 p.m. as his job as Director General of the BBC last Thursday, and the last thing he did was to sack Scott Mills, which begs the question, is it legacy, is it timing, is it wiping the slate clean? Did he want that done before he went? Have they jumped too quickly? I mean, you could conceivably say that if Scott Mills' lawyers are any good, they'll be saying, but you knew about that when you employed me and trying to get a payout. What we do know is, and you know this better than anybody and me, once that is said, it's incredibly hard to come back from. Now, there might be a lot more that we will find out as the days roll on, but unfortunately for the BBC, there seems to be a sort of an increasing story. When you think Savile, you think Rolf Harris, you think Stuart Hall, you think Greg Wallace, you think it just, I don't know, is the BBC full of people who think they don't have to answer the same rules as everybody else? I'm not sure.
I think there's probably an overlap between the kind of people that are very successful in media, not all of us, of course, Jeremy and myself, exempting ourselves from this, I'd like to think, but the kind of people who are in media and who climb to the top, and the kind of people who have what they call dark triad traits, namely psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. Those are the people who get to the top. And they say that the number of psychopaths in the general population is around 1%, and of CEOs or very successful people, it climbs to 3 or 4%, and it's all on a bit of a spectrum. So we don't know to what extent this is the BBC and their lack of vetting, their lack of being at all interested in finding out who's done what, and to what extent it is just successful people who get very high up, you know. And then we have this sort of cultish situation where everybody's a bit worried about their own neck. They're all thinking, oh gosh, what if I say the wrong thing, and what if I'm wrong about this, and so on. So we have people in our own kind of alt news or YouTube sphere who everyone knows about, but we can't really talk about just in case we get it wrong, in case we get sued and things like that.
That's so what I have to say. I'm going to jump in and commend this man. You really do need to watch the Heretics podcast, because when I did the interview with you, I hadn't spoken about what happened to me. I don't need to get into that today, but you were incredible. And actually, this fear, as you quite rightly say it, allows some people to say, well, that's fear allows you to be... No, it actually allows a greater degree of honesty, because I don't believe, and I'd love your opinion, I don't think the BBC portrays itself as accountable to us, and of course they have to be, because we are forced to pay them £175 each. That's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, in that sense, the BBC reflects our politicians. I mean, they don't really speak for us. There's no accountability. Just yesterday, the BBC were putting out this kind of social engineering that they do from time to time to tell us that we are too dog-friendly. Did you see that?
Yes, I did see it.
We're too dog-friendly. So you start going, OK, we know that's to appease certain people from different cultures who are not used to our culture with dogs, but we didn't ask for that. We're not paying the licence fee for that. We're paying the licence fee to reflect our reality back to us, to reflect the news, the actual transparent news back to us. So they're not interested in that. And what I would say is that Scott Mills thing, I would wager, we don't know, that something's about to come out. And that's why they did it.
I can tell you that. Listen, we've talked privately. Drip, drip, drip all week. There'll be a big Sunday exposure. Somebody's come forward with something, and they are trying to avoid, I suspect, what they've been told they're guilty of before. Do you think that the BBC is under threat genuinely? Not from extinction, but in real under threat if it carries on like this in people's minds?
Yeah, I think it's under threat anyway. I don't really know what they can do going forward. Some of that is not entirely their fault. It's the changing, look at us and right now. We don't need the BBC. We're on here. We're doing this. We all have our alternative spaces. We've got our YouTube and those kinds of things. Who's really tuning in to watch the BBC? I mean, people still do, but not quite as much. And then it's a case of who do they reflect? I mean, if you create this multicultural society, which they were very much behind,
of course,
how can you possibly have one TV channel that reflects the realities of all of those different kinds of people? It's impossible.
But that's the point, because I always, you see, we can talk about vetting, but we also need to talk about output. Listen, I know what Heretics is, you know what Talk is, but I want my state broadcaster to give me everything. And I said it earlier, McSweeney was on the front of every paper for 5-6 days. They didn't report on it, which makes one believe, whether people like it or not, that they're biased. And you can't have a state broadcaster, Andrew, with biased opinions, because you're not picking that, are you? You're being told you've got to watch it.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it was just going to get worse as we become more of a fractured society. There's something they call the bus stop test, which is, in any society, could you just go to a bus stop and could you speak to the person next to you and say, gosh, loved that TV show last night? I don't think this country can do that anymore. I think we're so fractured, we're so multicultural, and it's not because of people of different skin colour and things like that. Those people are welcome. They should have been incentivised to join our culture rather than the channels like the BBC bending over backwards to portray their cultures, because they're never going to be able to keep that up. So ultimately, the BBC is going to become less and less popular. They're going to start with, as they did yesterday, this stuff about dogs. We don't want dogs in this country. It's not, it's not our culture anymore. That kind of thing. And it's going to get worse and worse. So it is just a self-serving institution. And going back to the Scott Mills issue, it is a case of everybody just wants to save their own hide. Everybody in that organisation just goes into work and goes, gosh, can I just survive another day in this place, which is being run into the ground. And eventually something's happened where Scott Mills' story is going to be coming up. As you said, maybe a newspaper got in touch and said, look, we'll give you a right of reply, but in the next few days there's a big story coming out, and they had to get rid of him before that happened. So we'll have to see.
It's really interesting. Do you miss the BBC, Andrew Gold?
Well, I was never there institutionally. I was selling documentaries from the outside. So I made documentaries for them, like this one about exorcism. I went in, they told me I was too white to be on anything else, and I went out, and that was it. It wasn't a very pleasant experience.
Mate, I mean it. It was one of my greatest days doing that interview with you, and if you get a chance, peeps, the Heretics podcast is absolutely fantastic, with a really nice man as well. Andrew Gold, thank you so much indeed for joining us this morning on Talk Breakfast. Good man. Check him out. It's brilliant, by the way. 0344 499 1000. Darcy, good morning.
Jeremy, loving the show as usual. Darcy from Wiltshire. So we live in a lawless society where people can get away with doing all sorts of things. So how about the drilling companies just start drilling? There aren't enough police to go and arrest them and stop them. We might as well just start drilling.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 4 minutes to 10. Thank you to the team today. Been utterly brilliant. Also, just Andrew Gold. I'm not just saying it because he's a mate. It is fascinating. One of the few people that can do an interview and listen to what you're saying. You might want to check it out. Zarina, good morning. A lot of these perpetrators, this is talking about the grooming gangs, preying on the young girls, I believe, ferry the children around in taxis. Why can't local authorities revoke licences immediately, or the families affected start a boycott of using taxis, hurt these people in their back pockets as start of the fight back? If the authorities do not take action, then the families affected should rise up and use the power of the people. Jez, after listening, this is Karen in Newcastle. After listening to Marlon West and Maggie Oliver on your show, it's these kinds of people that we should be looking up to, not this ridiculous government. Let's hope this is the start of dealing with these grooming gangs. This is on the back of the news today that the grooming gang inquiry starts under the tutelage, well, the chairmanship of Baroness Longfield. She has, in the last hour, committed, she said, police officers who failed to investigate Asian grooming gangs will be held to account by the public inquiry into the scandal. She said the inquiry would not shy away from directly investigating the specific ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of the perpetrators behind grooming gangs. That's what we've all wanted for so long, but there is real cynicism as to whether that will actually happen. Steve in Leicestershire makes a great point. Morning, Jez, with the G, it's a J. I bet London won't be included in the rape gang inquiry. That's very interesting. And Joanna from Salisbury, I watch maybe 16 hours of BBC a year. I stopped watching the BBC when I started questioning the news items. Then I got hooked on watching Talk TV, and specifically Julia Hartley-Brewer. Good morning.
Oh, hello. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm very well. I'm quite encouraged by this this grooming gangs announcement and the terms. The ethnicity, culture, and again, it's about the culture. It's people where people are coming from, the religion. That's all really important. And publishing reports along the way, individual city inquiries. Only one's been confirmed so far.
Straight to Marlon West, the father. There's cynicism, but I want to hope.
This is, I think, okay, and only 3 years. Again, I say only 3 years. Look, we've waited 20. That's good for an inquiry, whether it lasts longer.
Are you with me, though, that it's the biggest stain? I think it's disgusting. It's institutionally disgusting as a society to think.
This is the cover-up. This is the thing. The people who go, oh, there are plenty of white people who are raped. Yes, I know that. But they get prosecuted if they're found out.
Yes.
The issue here is that it was known about by the authorities, by the police, by local councils, by the schools, by everyone. Everyone knew, and they did nothing about it.